Chapter 1165. As he stepped into the light, a warm and cordial aura spread out. Qin Yu knew that from this moment on, he had returned to the vast Yang world. Looking up, what appeared in front of him was a vast and resplendent star chart. It was composed of countless motes of light. Some motes of light were large and some were small. Subconsciously, Qin Yu's eyes widened. This was because he discovered that each one represented a world. That's right, this was vast Yang. It was different from the abyss, but there wasn't any essential difference. The abyss had layers upon layers, and vast Yang was like islands scattered across the sea. The distance between them varied. After the shock passed, Qin Yu revealed a look of amazement. So this was the true appearance of the vast Yang world. Trillions of lives were born because of it, and they lived in vast Yang's endless world. But how many people had ever seen its true appearance? If so, then Qin Yu was undoubtedly very lucky. But why did the star chart of the entire vast Yang world appear in front of him? Did it want him to choose where he would return from? Besides this, Qin Yu couldn't think of any other possibilities. It couldn't be that the vast Yang world wanted him to choose a fiefdom in order to commend his meritorious deeds in the abyss, right? For instance, he could casually point a finger, and it would become the territory that Qin Yu ruled. That was far too fantastical. Qin Yu took a deep breath and focused his senses. From the star chart in front of him, he could feel a faint but incomparably cordial aura. He looked over, and the star chart zoomed in with him. A small mote of light appeared in front of him. It really was small. If he hadn't magnified it a great deal, Qin Yu wouldn't have been able to find the position of this mote of light on the star chart. This was his homeland, the place where Ning Ling, Yu Qi, and the others were. Qin Yu was excited. Many years had passed since he crossed worlds and left. He originally wanted to find a way to return to his homeland as soon as possible after returning to the vast Yang world. He never thought that the vast Yang world would be so considerate. Looking at the mote of light in front of him, Qin Yu was enlightened. As long as he touched it and wasn't rejected by the world's aura, he could directly enter. Home, I want to go home. The vast Yang star chart was vast and boundless. It gave birth to countless large and small worlds. But no matter how many places he went, no matter how formidable his strength was, there would always be only one home. Qin Yu frowned, because at this moment he could feel a trace of abnormality from the dot of light in front of him. There seemed to be some kind of very powerful aura, and there was more than one, entrenched in this world, but Qin Yu was well aware that as a small world, it would be difficult for it to breed truly formidable existences. Moreover, these powerful auras gave him a very unfamiliar feeling. Something was wrong. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. At this time, the light in front of him flashed, and a dark aura was released. Although it was weak, it couldn't escape Qin Yu's perception. His pupils shrank, the aura of the abyss. As someone who had just narrowly escaped from the pursuit of the will of the abyss, it was impossible for Qin Yu's judgment to be wrong. What was going on? Why was there the aura of the abyss? Qin Yu lifted a hand and grasped forwards. This wisp of darkness aura fell into his hand. Sacrifice. Summon. This seemed to be a special ceremony of the abyss. They used sacrifices to exchange for abyssal power or to summon the projection of abyssal creatures. Roar. At this time, a bloody and angry roar echoed in Qin Yu's ears. This roar was incomparably angry at him for intercepting its sacrifice. A cold light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He coldly snorted and clenched his fingers. With a loud crack, the dark aura in his palm shattered. The angry roar turned into a cry of panic mixed with pain. Qin Yu didn't delay any longer. He stepped forwards and vanished from sight. In a massive underground cave, countless torches burned. But even so, they couldn't disperse the darkness on the altar. The thick black gas was rolling and letting out noises that sounded like flowing liquids. Like porridge that had been cooked, it was bubbling nonstop. Beneath the altar, Countless figures constantly kowtowed in worship, their mouths chanting strange and deep syllables. The atmosphere was cold and horrifying. The woman tied to the wooden frame was the sacrificial offering this time. She had already witnessed the fates of the previous sacrificial offerings, and her complexion was deathly pale. If she could, she would rather end her own life than go through that kind of inhuman pain and torture. But it was clear that the sacrificial offerings didn't have the qualifications to choose how they died. Gulp, gulp. The sound of bubbles bursting became increasingly rapid. The tumbling black energy became even more intense. The worshipping figures beneath the altar all revealed feverish expressions. Their eyes were filled with fear and anticipation as they began to chant faster and faster. The Lord from the abyss was about to arrive. This woman was the best sacrificial offering they had captured this time. They hoped that the Lord would be satisfied and grant them more strength of darkness. Pah! With a light sound, the tumbling black energy suddenly broke apart from within. Then, a slender hand stretched out from within. The sacrificial woman's eyes widened, revealing panic and despair. Her face was filled with disbelief and pain. Abyssal creature. It was actually an abyssal creature. She couldn't help but recall the horrifying situation caused by the last abyssal creature that descended. That sort of strength was inconceivably formidable. Moreover, it possessed a horrifying destructive might towards flesh and blood beings. Even senior Shemin was only able to barely withstand it. In the end, that abyssal creature had dissipated from the world. Otherwise, everyone would have been swallowed up by the darkness. Today, because of her, another abyssal creature had been summoned, the calamity had begun once more, and she was the source of this calamity. Whoosh! There was an uproar below the altar. Even the chanting came to a halt. But soon they regained their composure. Their eyes widened, revealing endless excitement. An ordinary sacrifice had actually summoned the Lord from the abyss, and most importantly, the hand that stretched out from the black energy. Its appearance was fair and slender, and it was the palm of a man. Compared to the life forms of the vast Yang world, there was no difference at all. For creatures from the abyss, the more similar they were to flesh and blood beings, the more powerful they would be. This was something they were well aware of. We welcome the Lord's arrival to vast Yang. Beneath the altar, the worshipper at the very front roared out in excitement. He raised his head to reveal his face. Most of his face was covered in black snake scales, and his eyes had become vertical pupils similar to those of a snake. Because of his excitement, his body was constantly shivering. He had only bathed in the baptism of darkness twice before he had his current strength and became the leader of this stronghold. If he could obtain another baptism of darkness, his strength would surely rise to an astonishing degree. He might even have the chance to transform into a true demon creature and become a true great figure of the dark world. Thinking of this, the snake man became even more excited. His chanting became incomparably loud and passionate. Behind him, a large number of dark believers followed their leader. They used all of their strength to sing praises, praising and welcoming the Lord from the abyss. As if feeling their sincere invitation, the hand that stretched out from the black energy paused for a moment. Then it turned around and forcefully tore. With a cracking sound, a passage gate appeared deep within the black energy. The summoned abyssal creature had truly arrived. Bang! The entire cave shook. All of the dark believers kneeling beneath the altar felt their breath catch in their throat and their hearts nearly stopped beating. At this moment, they felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their heads. The aura of a predator that came from the top of the food chain was so terrifying that it left them in despair. The snake man's eyes widened, revealing shock and joy. Although he had already expected this, he never imagined that this Lord would be so formidable. He suppressed the trembling in his heart and forced himself to look up. What he saw was an incomparably handsome face, luxurious black robes. His eyes were cold and indifferent. Every movement he made was filled with a mysterious, noble, and powerful aura. In particular, there was a hint of darkness. If darkness could be said to be divided into ranks, then the darkness within this Lord's body would be the world's most powerful eternal night, the source of all darkness. It was pure, and incomparably powerful. The person in front of them was absolutely a great figure at the peak of the abyss. He was a formidable existence that they, the dark believers, had never come into contact with before. The snake man was so excited that his tongue nearly tied up. At this moment, he was incomparably sure that, as long as he could win the favor of this lord, he would be able to smoothly transform into a demon creature, and an extremely powerful one at that. A great figure from the abyss would never easily descend to vast Sun City. This was something that the ancestor of darkness had already told every believer. Thus, there had to be a reason why this great figure would descend. In the snake man's opinion, the only possibility was the sacrificial offering that was imprisoned on the altar. Luckily, he had restrained his desires and hadn't touched this beautiful woman. If she was able to attract such a powerful abyssal existence to descend, there must be some secret on her body. With a deep breath, the snake man raised his hands and said in the most respectful tone possible, "Honorable and powerful Lord, this is the gift I offer to you. Please accept the offering of this lowly dark believer." Guling-er's eyes widened. She looked at the figure that broke through the darkness and descended on the altar. Her body shivered, disbelief on her face. There were some subtle changes to his facial features. They were more three-dimensional and beautiful, and he looked far more handsome than before. But no matter how much he changed, the familiarity between his eyebrows couldn't be faked. But how was this possible? How could he pass through the summoning of the dark strength and return? Big brother Chinyu. Chinyu revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He never thought that he would run into Guling as soon as he returned. This girl was absolutely one of the few truly important people in his life. Linger. But soon, an icy killing intent flashed in Chinyu's eyes. She was clearly the sacrificial offering placed on the altar at this time. If it weren't for Chinyu intercepting her at this moment, the consequences would have been inconceivable. The ropes formed from the dark strength around Guling broke apart. She slumped to the ground and fell into Chinyu's arms. "Big brother Chinyu, it's you. It's really you. Where have you been all these years?" Guling-er's appearance hadn't changed much from the past, but the passage of time had left its mark on her body. She had lost her youth, revealing a mature charm. She had combed her hair into a woman's bun. Looking at her appearance, it seemed she was already married. Guilt flashed in Chinyu's eyes. He had indeed been gone for far too long. He had even missed something as important as her wedding. "I've been to many places these past years. If there is a chance in the future, I will slowly tell you. You are in a very weak state right now, so don't speak for now." Guling-er's eyes widened. She suddenly thought of something and screamed with all her strength. "Big brother Chinyu, hurry, and save Senior Shimin." In her desperation, she stimulated her injuries. Her vision darkened, and she fainted. Chin-yu's complexion changed. He lifted a hand and placed it on her body. Luckily, she had only fainted and wasn't too much of a problem. He left a wisp of strength in her body to nourish her weak body. Then he looked up at the altar. The snake man was already dumbfounded. He stared at the scene in front of him, feeling as if a bolt of lightning had struck him in the head. The sacrifice they had captured was someone that knew the Lord that descended from the abyss. Not only did they know each other, but they clearly had a close relationship. Just now, he had clearly seen the change in Chinyu's complexion. It was over. Something like this actually happened. Who could tell him why such a great figure from the abyss would know a woman from the vast young world? There was no logic to this at all. It didn't make any sense at all. But logic was clearly not something that he should continue to consider at this time. The half-snake man sweated profusely as he stammered, My lord, please listen to my explanation." I didn't know that you and this young lady knew each other. He still had many words he wanted to say. He had even thought it over. As long as he could preserve his little life, he would rather swear the most vicious of dark contracts. Selling his life was better than losing it. But unfortunately, Qin Yu didn't give him a chance to continue speaking. With a dull popping sound, the snake man's head shattered. That incomparably fierce half-man, half-beast face shattered into countless pieces. The cave was in chaos. Seeing their leader be killed, countless dark believers felt their bodies turn cold. "My lord, please forgive us. We absolutely had no intention of offending you. My lord, please be magnanimous and forgive our sins." Qin Yu frowned. He swept his eyes over the entire cave. He could feel a faint abyssal strength from these people. It wasn't pure. It was clear that it was mixed with something else. After absorbing this strength, the characteristics of their lives had changed. At the very least, they could no longer be considered pure flesh and blood life forms. Qin Yu's frown deepened. He coldly snorted. Instead of being a good person, they had to make themselves into something that was neither human nor ghost just for a bit of strength. Putong, Putong, in that instant, with a cold cough, all the dark believers in the cave fell to the ground. The faint abyssal strength within their bodies was forcefully scattered, turning into black energy that vanished into the air. After doing all of this, Qin Yu held onto Guling. He sensed with rapt attention. Then he lifted a hand and tore open space, stepping inside. Roar! With a loud roar, the incomparably massive white bone giant was smashed apart by the power of darkness. Shan Wugu spat out a mouthful of blood. Crackling sounds came from his chest. It was unknown just how many bones had been broken. He retreated and fell to the ground. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood, mixed with fragments of his organs. His aura was like a punctured balloon, rapidly plummeting. Lord Whitebone! Several cultivators gathered around him, their expressions anxious and their eyes subconsciously revealing fear. Senior Shiman was being held back by the demonic creatures and was slaughtering his way through the clouds. As for Lord Whitebone, the only one capable of resisting the invasion of darkness, he had been defeated in a continuous battle. As for the rest of them, besides waiting for death, they had no other choice. The power of darkness that smashed apart the white bone giant rapidly condensed into a figure. It was a large man with a horn on his head who hadn't completely transformed into a devil. He wildly laughed and pointed a finger at the terrifying scar between his eyebrows. "Shan Wugu, in the past you nearly killed me with a single palm strike. You never imagined that such a day would come, right? Ha ha ha! Today is the day you die. You demonic path remnants will all be buried in the darkness. Protect Lord Whitebone." With angry roars, several figures flew into the skies. But in the next moment, they were sent flying back at an even faster speed. The aura of darkness wrapped around their bodies. As it came into contact with their flesh and blood, there was a horrifying sound of corrosion. Pitiful screams spread into everyone's ears, causing their faces to pale. Fuse with the power of darkness, and you can obtain rebirth and even greater strength. Otherwise, you will suffer the same fate as these people. You will be corroded into bones by the power of darkness, and even your souls will dissipate in pain. Chila! Space suddenly shattered, and the laughing one-horn man's body exploded into pieces with a bang. A rich power of darkness erupted, crazily surging as it tried to reform its body. But the killing strength was far too strong, surpassing the limits of what it could withstand. No, with a desperate roar, the power of darkness completely collapsed, tumbling away and vanishing from sight. The world was left deathly silent. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the torn space in front of them. In the next moment, an icy voice clearly spread into everyone's ears. If anyone dares to attack again, this will be their fate. Chapter 1166. Surrounded by people, the severely wounded Shan Wugu's eyes widened. This voice, whoosh. A shrill sound tore through the air. It was clear that some existence was rushing over at an astonishing speed. Katcha! Katcha! As the sound tore through the air, cracks began to appear. With the tear in space as the center, they began to spread out in all directions. Bang! With a loud explosion, space collapsed and a figure stepped out. His black robes fluttered about him and a tyrannical aura swept out in all directions. He was holding an unconscious woman in his arms. At this time he seemed to sense something and looked down, his eyes meeting with Shan Wugu's. After a brief pause, he smiled. "Potato! I knew you brat wouldn't be so easily killed." Shan Wugu seemed to be laughing and crying at the same time. His lips trembled several times. "If a rotten taro like you is still alive and well, then of course I won't die." "Potato, Taro, what was going on?" The demonic path cultivator beside him felt as if he were going crazy. At this time he was still in the mood to joke around. However, the good news was that this powerhouse that broke through space seemed to be a friend of Lord Whitebone. If this was true, then with his help, they might be able to survive the siege of the dark influences. A demonic path cultivator cupped his hands together and bowed. "Sir, if you can lend us a helping hand today, my demonic path will forever remember this great kindness." Cough, cough, cough. Shan Wugu violently coughed. He glared at the demonic path cultivator, a strange expression on his face. The demonic path cultivator was left bewildered by Shan Wugu's glare. He thought, "Why are you looking at me like this?" Seeing him coughing incessantly, one of the few remaining demonic path powerhouses was afraid that he would cough his lungs out just like that. "Qin, you lifted a hand and pressed it down. That's enough. Don't be so agitated. Even if you aren't beaten to death, you will end up crippled by your own coughing." Looking at the dumbfounded demonic path cultivator, Qin Yu lightly said, "However, you really don't need to ask me, because this is what I should be doing to begin with." The demonic path cultivator subconsciously said, "Sir, are you acquainted with my demonic path?" Shan Wugu finally stopped coughing. He caught his breath and grumpily said, "Of course we do, and our relationship isn't small at all. Although the demonic path's small world has already been destroyed, you still entered the Holy Emperor Palace to pay your respects. Don't you think this person in front of you looks familiar?" He waved his hand, excitement in his voice. "What are you all standing around for? Hurry up and greet your demonic path's Saint Sovereign." Qin Yu was still alive. He had returned. Although the dark influences were powerful, and even solitary Westgate was only barely able to resist the demon life forms. But at this moment, Shan Wugu didn't doubt whether or not Qin Yu could resolve the dangers before him. This was because, from many years ago, Qin Yu had given him the belief that he was invincible. It was as if all dangers and obstacles were nothing in front of him. Perhaps this could be called a mysterious confidence. His Majesty, the Holy Emperor? The demonic path cultivators were stunned. This was because this name hadn't appeared in their ears for a long time. The Holy Land's small world had been destroyed, an entire foundation of the demonic path had been destroyed. They had turned into stray dogs, fleeing for their lives every day. Every day, all they could think about was how to continue living so that the inheritances of the demonic path wouldn't be severed. And when they were at their most desperate and fearful moment, someone had told them that His Majesty the Saint Sovereign had returned. Their first thought was that this was impossible, but then they reacted. In the current situation, it was impossible for Lord Whitebone to joke about something like this. Everyone's eyes gathered on Qin Yu's body. Their eyes widened and their breathing quickened. In the end, the image was different from the real person. In these past years, as his cultivation rose, Qin Yu's appearance had changed. But once the paper window was pierced through, the figure in front of them immediately overlapped with the image of the cold and aloof His Majesty, the Saint Sovereign in the Saint Sovereign Palace. It was His Majesty the Saint Sovereign. It was His Majesty the Saint Sovereign. Puff! The demonic path cultivator who spoke trembled like a sieve. He fell to his knees. Disciple Jingyang respectfully welcomes His Majesty, the Saint Sovereign, back. We respectfully welcome His Majesty, the Saint Sovereign, back. The incomparably powerful His Majesty, the Saint Sovereign, who had destroyed the entire mortal sect with his own strength and whose cultivation had reached the peak of the world, had returned. He would definitely be able to save the demonic path and lead them out of the swamp of death and despair. Feeling the excitement and ecstasy hidden in their red eyes, Qin Yu felt a bit of bitterness in his heart. Although he didn't know what had happened, it wasn't hard to guess just what they had experienced these past years just from what they saw. Although Qin Yu didn't care too much about becoming the demonic path Saint Sovereign, since he was honored as the Saint Sovereign, he should be responsible for those who believed in him. As the horned large man was killed, the dark influences fell into a brief silence. As they looked at Qin Yu, their eyes were cold and cruel, but even more filled with dread. The horned man wasn't the strongest amongst them, but for him to be killed in the blink of an eye and end up with his soul and body destroyed, this was far too terrifying. Humph! The demonic path's small world has already been destroyed, so where is the Saint Sovereign? Whoever can kill this person can obtain the chance to bathe in darkness. A sneer echoed out from the skies above. At this time it was pitch black. Endless darkness aura tumbled about, like a raging sea in a cold winter night. Silent eyes lit up, revealing a burning greed. They subconsciously licked their lips, as if they already viewed Qin Yu as a delicious meal on their plates. To bathe in darkness and transform into a demonic creature, this was nearly the pinnacle of their pursuit. Now this chance was right in front of them. As for taking risks, humph humph. Everything in this world depended on struggle. If they didn't risk their lives, how could they climb up? Ha ha ha, he's mine! With a loud explosion, someone from the dark camp exploded, turning into billowing darkness aura that held forth like a demonic dragon. His first move was his strongest attack. With the horned man being killed right in front of him, he certainly didn't dare to be careless. Closer, closer. Seeing Qin Yu not respond, this person was overjoyed. He primarily cultivated the power of corrosive darkness, and its might was truly astonishing. In addition, he didn't hesitate to damage himself and became even more ferocious. As long as he could drag this boy in, no matter how transcendent his abilities were, he would still be corroded into a pile of rotten meat. The only thing that left him puzzled was that Qin Yu didn't seem frightened, nor did he seem like he hadn't reacted. This was because his eyes were far too calm. They were so calm that they were like frozen water, without the slightest ripple. Without a chance to think further, the dark camp cultivator's consciousness fell into eternal darkness with this doubt in his mind. Outside it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Those eyes that fell on Qin Yu were now perfectly round, like toads that had seen a sharp knife on a chopping board. The thoughts in their hearts were, "It's over, it's all over." Their bodies were ice cold and their hearts were ice cold. Single Horn could comfort himself that he had been killed. He had been caught off guard, or perhaps he had been tricked by some method, so he hadn't been able to display his full strength. But this time he couldn't fool anyone. The black poison python that had gone all out and used everything he had been casually grabbed. With a puff, there was no follow-up. That's right, just as he had said, he had completely vanished along with the dissipating darkness aura. There was one point that was the same as Single Horn's. These two people had died without even dregs remaining. Fear gnawed at the mind, like a viper. Go bathe in your mother's darkness. Transforming into a demonic creature was their greatest wish. But living was clearly more important. Bang! Darkness aura erupted. Without leaving behind a single word, the dark camp cultivators fled in all directions. Although the punishment for fleeing in fear was extremely cruel within the dark camp, the law didn't punish the masses. This was the same no matter where it was. The person in front of them wasn't someone they could deal with. It was best to wait for His Excellency Abyssal to deal with solitary Westgate first, and then kill him. Now, Preserving their lives was number one. As they fled, a thought appeared in their hearts. This person, could he really be the demonic path's holy sovereign? But even if he was, he shouldn't be strong to such a degree, right? What a bunch of trash! In the skies filled with darkness aura, a roar echoed out once more. It was clear he felt his subordinates were losing face as they fled. Bang! As far as the eye could see, endless darkness aura shook. A phantom that looked like an avatar suddenly appeared. This was a demonic creature similar to an octopus. Its entire body was crimson like blazing flames. Its eyes ruthlessly glared at Chinyu. The fleeing dark camp cultivators paled. Then they revealed a look of joy. His Excellency Abyssal had taken action. This person would die without a doubt. As they thought this, their fleeing speed slowed down a bit. They turned their heads to look behind them. In the next moment, their eyes trembled and they nearly leapt out of their sockets. They only saw Chinyu lift his hand, just like when he had crushed the black poison python. He clenched his fingers towards the phantom descending from the skies. Space suddenly twisted. It was like a terrifying mouth had opened wide, swallowing up His Excellency Abyssal's projection. Ah! A pained roar echoed out from the skies. Endless darkness aura shook and a portion of it collapsed, revealing an incomparably massive and terrifying shadow. This was the true form of this demonic creature. At this moment, it fiercely turned its head, its blood-red eyes stubbornly staring at Chinyu, endless hatred in its eyes. I want you to die. In the next moment, the slightly dispersed darkness aura began to wildly rise. The dark camp cultivators felt their fear dissipate a little. They thought that His Excellency Abyssal was serious, and this person would soon die. Chinyu's eyebrows arched up. As he looked at the rapidly rising darkness aura, a trace of ridicule appeared in his eyes. You want to leave? It's too late. With a flick of his sleeves, there was a miserable scream. The thick darkness aura that filled the skies was instantly torn to pieces. In the distance, all of the tentacles had curled up into a ball. The demonic creature that had already run some distance away was now twisted into a ball, completely suppressed by an invisible strength. The dark camp cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. Their first thought was, how could you do this? We were prepared to see you erupt with a great show, but in the end you just turned around and ran away. If we hadn't been seen through, wouldn't we have been the ones to vent our anger on? Then a raging fear surged forth. It was like a rising tide, completely submerging their minds. Don't kill me. I beg you, don't kill me. The demonic creature blood octopus cried out miserably. Its giant body shivered and its eyes were filled with fear. He was also someone with status. If he had any other choice, he definitely wouldn't have allowed himself to be disgraced like this. But his strength didn't allow him to do so. The aura coming from Chinyu's body felt like a boundless ocean, as if a single wave could swallow him up. If he didn't run away, would he just wait for death? But the blood octopus never imagined that even after using all of its strength, even the eruption of darkness aura wouldn't be able to conceal the fact that it was trying to escape. After being caught by Chinyu, unless it wanted to die, begging for mercy was the only thing it could do. The dark camp cultivators' eyes didn't explode. Their reactions were extremely fast. After a brief moment of shock, they turned and fled. But the only movement they could successfully complete was to turn around. Then they all turned into wooden blocks and fell to the ground with clattering sounds. Their eyes widened, filled with fear. But they couldn't control themselves and couldn't say a single word. The blood octopus didn't have the time to care about the lives or deaths of his subordinates. As he watched Chinyu approach, a tide of fear rose within him. My lord, this is all my fault. I beg you to give me a chance. I am willing to make a dark oath to pledge my loyalty to my lord. Seeing that Chinyu's expression didn't change at all, the blood octopus nearly pissed himself. I can help you detoxify the poison. Yes, detoxify it. Fellow demonic path Taoists, I injured many of them. I can take back the poison from their bodies. Qin Yu frowned. Seeing him finally respond, the blood octopus hurriedly said, "This is true. If you keep me alive, it will be more beneficial to my lord." Chapter 11:67. Shan Wugu regained his composure. He looked into Qin Yu's eyes and said, he's right. Many people have been poisoned." Qin Yu twirled his fingers. "Then let him live first." His eyes were cold and indifferent. "I believe you won't run around." The blood octopus nodded desperately. Whoosh! Solitary Westgate's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Qin Yu. He looked at Qin Yu, his eyes filled with emotion. "Perhaps I should have followed you in the past." Although he appeared calm on the surface, great waves were tumbling in his heart. Just how many years had passed? To cultivators like them, it might be an exaggeration to say that time had passed in the blink of an eye, but it definitely couldn't be considered a long time. The higher one climbed the great Tao, the more astonishingly difficult it was. To be able to make 20% or 30% progress in several hundred years was already something to be happy about. But from what he could see, Qin Yu's increase in strength was likely several hundred or even 1,000 points. If he didn't see this with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe. Qin Yu smiled and shook his head. "Westgate, you were worried about your wife and child, but I had nowhere else to go. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone out to wander the world." Solitary Westgate's complexion stiffened. Qin Yu glanced at him and then at Shan Wugu. Shan Wugu's head was lowered, so he couldn't see his expression. Qin Yu took a deep breath and said, "Come with me." He handed Guling over to a demonic path female cultivator with shining eyes. Then, with a flick of his sleeves, the two of them vanished from sight. His Majesty Saint Sovereign's strength has already transcended the world. The demonic path has been in decline for many years. Now that His Majesty has returned, it is only a matter of time before we return to our peak. Darkness, an immortal source, their good days have come to an end. The excited demonic path cultivators shook so hard that they almost turned into sieves. But they didn't know that His Majesty Saint Sovereign's mental state had already collapsed. Ningling and Yu Qi had disappeared in the battle where the demonic path's Holy Land small world was destroyed. Qin Yu's voice trembled. Just what happened? At this time his complexion was so gloomy that it could drip water. Solitary Westgate and Shan Wugu stiffened and their faces paled. Qin Yu took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and opened them again. "I'm sorry, I wasn't targeting you." Solitary Westgate bitterly smiled. "I understand, but your current strength is a bit frightening." His thoughts stirred and his aura erupted. Just this alone left him gasping for breath. This was not something that could be summed up with just the word scary. He glanced at Qin Yu and continued, "All these years we have been searching. Although we did not find Ningling and Yu Qi's whereabouts, we can confirm that this matter is related to the Darkness faction and the Immortal Origin faction." Shan Wugu said, "In the past, the Dark Knight Divine Seat colluded with the Dark faction and joined forces with the Immortal Origin faction to break through the demonic path's small world. This battle was extremely brutal, but according to the conclusion of the battle, it is likely that capturing Ningling and Yu Qi was the main goal of both sides. In that battle, there was a struggle between the darkness and immortal essences. In addition to the investigation over the years, it is highly likely that Ningling and Yu Qi were captured by one side each." Solitary Westgate rubbed his chin. "In truth, this matter itself is something I have never been able to figure out. You have already left this world. So could they have predicted the future and captured Ningling and Yu Qi ahead of time to use them to threaten you?" Qin Yu was silent. He had a thought in his mind. The reason the two of them were captured was likely related to the Myriad Soul Path. Someone had learned of Ningling's identity and was trying to obtain benefits from her. But Yu Qi? Why was she also taken away? This didn't make sense. But at this time, Qin Yu didn't have the mind to consider whether or not this explanation made sense. Ningling and Yu Qi had been taken away, and it was unknown whether or not they were safe. He wanted to kill them. With Qin Yu's current strength, he could sense the entire world with just a thought. Although it couldn't be said to be accurate, his approximate location shouldn't be wrong. I will return soon. As he spoke, he took a step forwards. Space twisted, concealing his figure. The headquarters of the dark faction, Broken Cloud Mountain. This place was shrouded in a dark aura all year round, without the least bit of light illuminating it. Suddenly, there was a loud sound like thunder. The dark aura that covered the skies directly collapsed. A wild strength shook the mountain like a tide. It crashed into Broken Cloud Mountain, and countless pavilions and palaces hidden in the darkness began to collapse with mournful cries. Enemy attack! Who dares to rush into my dark holy land? You are courting death. Several figures shot into the skies from the chaos, their momentum fierce and killing intent rising to the skies. A powerful dark aura left one's heart racing. Qin Yu stepped forwards. He lifted a hand and pressed downwards. With a loud bang, the void instantly condensed into a mountain. The complexions of the several dark faction powerhouses that rushed into the skies changed. Before they could make a single sound, they were slapped away like flies. Puff, puff! Blood wildly gushed out from every orifice of their heads. Several of their bodies twisted together, and large chunks of their flesh and blood ruptured. It seemed they were exhaling more than they were inhaling. With hatred in his heart, Qin Yu had no scruples about attacking. Insolence! Who dares to rush into my Broken Cloud Mountain? A deep roar echoed out from the mountain. In the next moment, a giant hand shot up into the skies, grasping at Qin Yu. This hand was like a beast's claw. Although it had the fingers of a human, they had sharp claws and were covered with thick scales. It was ferocious and horrifying. And what was even more terrifying was that the aura that this hand released was terrifying to the extreme, as if it could shatter the entire skies. Qin Yu coldly snorted. He punched out. At this time, there seemed to be a roar in the void. A phantom appeared behind him. It was the Abyssal Titan, comprehending light and darkness as one. This was a powerful bloodline strength that came from the abyss. Even after entering the vast Yang world, he was still able to use some of it. At this time, as Qin Yu attacked, the Abyssal Titan Phantom punched out, colliding with the giant hand like a bolt of lightning. Ah! There was a pained howl. The scaled hand with sharp claws directly disintegrated. Countless pieces of flesh and broken bones shot out in all directions. The terrifying strength carried with it was like a meteor shower falling from the heavens. It smashed into the ruined, Broken Cloud Mountain, creating countless large and small holes. In the blink of an eye, countless dark faction cultivators had died here. You dare to injure me? You deserve to die. Rumble, rumble. The entire Broken Cloud Mountain trembled. A terrifying darkness aura erupted like a volcano awakening, erupting from within. It was as thick and viscous as ink, covering up everything. One could only faintly see two large red lanterns hidden in the black fog. Qin Yu's expression was icy cold. His tone was indifferent. Dark Knight Divine Seat, I never thought that after we parted ways in the past, you would turn into such a monster. The two lanterns in the thick, dark aura suddenly swelled up, revealing two round pupils that had condensed into a dot. They were actually two terrifying eyeballs. Qin Yu, it's actually you. A deep and low voice revealed excitement and excitement. Ha ha ha, I never thought you would return alive. Good, this is too good. Rumble, rumble. A loud sound echoed out from the darkness aura. As the mountain rocks tumbled about, the entire Broken Cloud Mountain trembled. A head popped out. It was no longer possible to tell what the Darkness Divine Seat had originally looked like. Two sharp horns that were covered in whorls poked out of the head, curved backwards like blades, just from appearance alone. It looked like an extremely ugly goat. That's right, it was a goat. The reason it was ugly was because its face was covered with giant pustules. Some of them were already rotten and constantly oozing out yellow and white pus. When mixed together with the rotting flesh, it was enough to make one's chest heave in pain. Now, this ugly head's blood-red eyes were stubbornly staring at Chinyu. They were cruel and ruthless. In the past, I was nearly killed by you. Although it was a blessing in disguise that allowed me to obtain the formidable strength I have today, I still remember this hatred in my heart. However, I will always remember this hatred in my heart, and I dare not forget it for even a moment. Now you have actually returned. How can I not be overjoyed? Chinyu, welcome the final nightmare of your life. Chinyu shook his head. How noisy! Did he come here to listen to people spout nonsense? The Dark Knight, Divine Seat, was enraged. After transforming into a demonic creature, his ruthlessness and desire to destroy had corroded his mind. In addition to facing Chinyu, he simply couldn't control his own emotions. Of course, he didn't want to control himself. In the Dark Knight, Divine Seat's opinion, with his current strength, killing Chinyu would be easy. No, he couldn't let him die so easily. He had to let Chinyu know just how stupid it was to anger a noble demonic creature. Despair and torment would become the only things left in his remaining life. With a diabolical laugh, the Dark Knight Divine Seat attacked. Endless darkness aura erupted, submerging Chinyu's figure. I will let you taste all the unbearable pain in the world. Then, I will swallow your soul filled with hatred and despair, turning it into a part of my strength. You talk too much. Bang! The darkness aura shattered. Dazzling light descended like a great sun. Like sharp arrows, countless holes were torn open from within. Impossible! The Dark Knight, Divine Seat, screamed out loud. He couldn't control his eyes, revealing a look of fear. Light purification. How can you control such a strength? His figure moved, wanting to escape. But before he could move, he was already covered by the light. With a shrill scream, the dark aura around the divine priest of the Dark Knight melted like frost on a window paper under the scorching sun. As the light fell on his body, there was a violent sound of corrosion. With a sizzling sound, his flesh and blood broke apart and massive amounts of black smoke rose up. Chinyu stepped forwards. Right now, every pore on his body was constantly emitting light. It was so dazzling that one couldn't look straight at it. Because of the light, space seemed blurry and dignified, making one instinctively feel awe. In the battle where the demonic path's small world was destroyed, you captured one of them. Give her to me, otherwise, today I will exterminate the darkness. Within the light, the Dark Knight Divine Seat howled in pain. Chinyu, if you dare to kill me, you will never see your woman again. As expected, they had captured one of Ningling and Yu Qi. Chinyu roared out loud. The power of light around his body rose, making him seem like a human-shaped sun that descended into the world. I will not accept threats. He could not compromise. Otherwise, rescuing Ningling and Yu Qi would be nothing but the ravings of an idiot. If the Dark Knight Divine Seat didn't say anything, then he would kill them one by one. He didn't believe that the cultivators of the Dark Camp didn't fear death. Ah, save me, save me. I don't want to die, I don't want to die. On Broken Cloud Mountain, a massive number of Dark Camp cultivators were nailed to the ground by the light. Their bodies twisted as they screamed in pain. Chapter 1168. The Dark Divine Seat was truly afraid. He could feel Chinyu's firm within the light. If he continued to resist, then he really would be killed. Stop, I'll talk. Chinyu flicked his sleeves, and the light immediately retreated. The terrifying sounds of corrosion came to a temporary stop. My patience is limited. I will only give you one chance. If you dare to lie to me, be prepared to be destroyed by the light. Darkness energy rapidly gushed out from the Dark Knight Divine Seat's body, covering his severely decaying body. As he looked at Chinyu, he revealed a look of panic. Chinyu, I can tell you everything, but you must promise not to kill me. Otherwise, even if I die, I won't say a single word. Speak. Without a guarantee, the Dark Knight Divine Seat hesitated. But the increasingly icy chill in Chinyu's eyes caused his heart to shiver. We did capture Yuchi back then, but I don't know why we captured her. It was the will of the demon world. After the capture, Yuchi was sacrificed to the demon world through the altar. The Dark Knight Divine Seat's eyes widened. Don't kill me. If you kill me, you will never find the entrance to the demon world. Chinyu said in a low voice. Can you open the entrance? Yes. I am the highest level demon creature in this world. I have a connection with the demon world. He glanced at Chinyu and continued, I can open a channel to help you find Yuchi. Chinyu said, Now let us begin. The Dark Knight Divine Throne's eyes widened. No, I need, but he was interrupted by Chinyu. If you can't, then die. The Dark Knight High Priest clenched his teeth. Fine, I'll try my best. He looked around, but you must first withdraw the power of light purification. Chinyu's thoughts stirred, and all the light in the skies suddenly hid away. He lifted a hand, and a brilliant beam of light howled out, submerging into Broken Cloud Mountain and forming a bottomless black hole. Don't play tricks. You won't have a chance. Shwa! Chinyu's figure flickered, and he drew backwards. The Dark Knight Divine Priest took a deep breath and then let out a sharp cry. In truth, he hadn't been lying before. With his own strength, it was impossible for him to open the channel to the devil world. But facing Chinyu, he had no other choice. Bang! A dark aura erupted, instantly forming a pitch-black vortex above his head. A terrifying, devouring power erupted from within. Ah, my power! Night God, what are you doing? Let me go! Let me go! On Broken Cloud Mountain, the many dark camp cultivators who had just escaped from death all looked terrified. As they roared, the dark aura within their bodies was forcibly pulled out. This process was no less than having one's flesh and blood extracted. The pain it caused was simply unimaginable. But their pain screams didn't affect the Divine Seed of Darkness, who was doing her best to control the vortex. Without careful preparation and the cooperation of a large number of offerings, even if he risked his life, it would be impossible to open the passage. Plundering these people's dark aura was the only option. Bang! The vortex above his head suddenly spun, releasing a surge of devouring power. All the dark aura in the entire Broken Cloud Mountain was extracted and absorbed into it. The dark camp's cultivators who had been screaming in pain all lost their voices at this moment. Or, to be more precise, they had lost the strength to continue speaking because of the terrifying pain. Their bodies rapidly withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Their widened eyes gradually lost all light. Without expression, Chinyu looked at the vortex in the skies. He could feel a strange and powerful aura condensing at the center of the vortex, cold and cruel, filled with the desire to destroy. This was likely the strength that came from the world of demons. The Divine Seed of Darkness suddenly roared out, Great Gate of Darkness, descend with your strength! Bang! A deep rumble echoed out from the vortex. A pitch-black gate without a single mark on its surface appeared. Then, with another loud bang, the gate violently trembled and a crack slowly opened. Bang! Endless dark aura wildly gushed out from the crack. An incomparably powerful aura instantly caused the skies to collapse. Who is it that is summoning me to descend? The incomparably weak Divine Seat of Darkness fell to the ground. I am the one who summoned your will. I ask my lord to descend and destroy the enemy in front of me. He stared at Chinyu, his eyes filled with hatred and also pride. Opening the gate of the world was something that only the peak abyssals could accomplish. He was still far from this boundary. So from the very start, the divine seat of darkness' goal had been to open the gate of darkness and summon the strength of powerful abyssal life forms to kill Chinyu. And now he had succeeded. Darkness is omnipotent, but you need to prepare enough sacrifices to satisfy me. A diabolical laugh echoed out from behind the gate of darkness. The divine seat of darkness stretched out his arms. Of course, as long as you kill him, this world will be your hunting ground. I can provide you with 7 days of time. Deal. With a satisfied voice, the gate of darkness exploded once more. An ear-piercing sound echoed out, and the crack in the gate opened again and again. A sharp claw drilled out, grabbing onto the gate of darkness as if it wanted to squeeze its entire body out. But it was too slow. Chinyu stepped forwards. The divine seat of darkness wasn't even able to follow his movements before he arrived at the center of the vortex, the gate of darkness. He reached out and grabbed the claw. Since you want to come out, then I will lend you a hand. Bang! The gate of darkness wildly shook, as if it were withstanding some terrifying strength. The speed at which it opened suddenly accelerated. The claw was constantly pulled out. A startled and angry roar echoed out from behind the gate. Who are you? Chinyu was expressionless. A debt collector. No, let me go. Let me go. The claw that drilled out from the gate of darkness desperately struggled to escape. But after being grabbed by Chinyu, it couldn't resist the pulling strength at all. Close the gate of darkness. Hurry and close the gate of darkness. A terrifying creature from the demon world roared. The divine seat of darkness was left dumbfounded. Who could tell him just what was happening? His eyes widened as eyeballs nearly popped out of his head. His body trembled because none of this was an illusion. Chinyu didn't speak. He only turned to look at the panic-stricken divine seat of darkness. His body stiffened and he lowered his head. Close the gate of darkness? If he dared to do so, he would be instantly torn to pieces. You lowly thing, what are you waiting for? Hurry and close the gate of darkness. The roar from behind the gate was filled with panic. This was because from the hand that grabbed him, he could feel the most terrifying darkness in the world. Demon life forms bathed in darkness, and now they feared the power of darkness. Although this sounded like a joke, it was actually the truth. This was because everything in the world had a limit, and darkness itself was also divided into different grades. Demons existed in darkness, but they could not survive in all darkness. In front of them was a dark abyss, bottomless and infinite. Once they were swallowed up, they would never be able to escape for 10,000 lifetimes. The demon life form behind the gate of darkness was terrified. It was sure that once it was pulled out, all that awaited it was destruction. Let me go. I can agree to anything you want. Chinyu narrowed his eyes. You have captured a woman from this world. Give her to me, and I will let you go. There was silence behind the gate. Chinyu sneered. His hand fiercely tightened. The rumbling of the gate of darkness became louder, and the range of its opening increased. A dark aura surged outwards. Looking down, one could faintly see an incomparably massive black shadow crazily struggling as it tried to escape. It was about to be pulled into this world. Hold on, I'll speak. The demon life form screamed in panic. In the past, there was indeed a woman who was sacrificed into the demon world. She seemed to be hiding some great secret on her body. But before the demon world discovered anything, that woman suddenly vanished, and we were never able to find her again. Kacha! Kacha! The claws that were grabbed by Chinyu instantly broke apart. Pitch-black demon blood flowed out, dripping onto the ground with a loud thud. At this moment, Chinyu's entire being turned into darkness, like an endless abyss. Even if light sprinkled down, it would be cleanly swallowed up. The voice behind the gate was filled with fear. It's true, I'm not lying to you. Extremely pure darkness constantly broke into its body. Wherever it passed, everything was frozen, falling into a deathly stillness. The exuberant life force that it was so proud of had no ability to resist in front of this darkness. Qin Yu roared, "You lied to me!" Incarnated into darkness, his voice was like a ghost from the depths of the abyss. His syllables were strange and icy cold. Most of the claws had already been pulled out of the gate of darkness. Black blood no longer seeped out from between the broken scales. This was because it had already been frozen. Faint traces of white appeared on the surface of the pitch-black scabs. It was mixed in with the evil demon's blood. When Xiao Chen's gaze landed on it, he could not suppress his instincts and endless fear. "No, everything I said is true." The voice behind the gate was even more terrified. "Let me go, please let me go." Qin Yu's grip tightened, his fingers digging into the flesh and blood. "You lied to me." This terrifying creature from the demon world began to go crazy as it smelled death. Loud rumbling sounds constantly echoed out from the gate of darkness. One could vaguely see its massive body violently tumbling about. But all of this was in vain. After it was caught by Qin Yu, it was thoroughly imprisoned. "If you kill me, you will become the enemy of the demon world. The supreme and unsurpassed Lord of Darkness will take revenge for me." Its screams were filled with despair. Qin Yu repeated this a third time. "You lied to me." "Kacha! Kacha!" With a cracking sound, cracks began to appear on the claws that were pulled out of the gate. Crack after crack spread out, finally sinking into the gate of darkness. The pained screams gradually weakened until they completely disappeared. Bang! The gate of darkness shattered, turning into endless darkness aura. But it didn't disperse. Rather, it revolved around Qin Yu, rumbling like the roaring of a tsunami. The dark night, divine throne gulped. The reason the gate of darkness had shattered was because it had lost its summoner. In other words, one of the most powerful peak existences of the demon world had been thoroughly killed. Qin Yu turned and left. Endless darkness aura followed him. He walked through the highest heavens, emitting thunderous roars. Watching him leave, the dark night divine throne's eyes flashed with joy. He wanted to turn and flee, but all his movements ended when he turned around. An extremely deep darkness appeared all around him, wrapping him up like a swamp. The dark night divine throne's face was filled with panic, but his struggles only increased the speed at which he was swallowed up. Like this, he slowly vanished into the darkness. Pa! Like a bubble bursting. This mass of darkness disappeared without warning, just as it had appeared. Together with the dark night divine throne, it was like it had never appeared in this world. Chapter 1169. Bathed in darkness, incarnated into darkness, controlled darkness. The truth was that Qin Yu had already believed the words of the demonic creature behind the door. Through the dark strength that invaded his body, Qin Yu could clearly feel the despair and fear in his heart before he died. In that state, the chances of this demonic creature deceiving him were minuscule. Thus, there was a high probability that Yu Qi really had disappeared, like he said. Qin Yu didn't know what the reason was, but he had a very bad premonition that he would never be able to find her again. This feeling was terrible, so bad that Qin Yu's mind fell into a state of complete darkness. If it weren't for his instincts restraining him, he would have destroyed everything in front of him. Yu Qi disappeared, she disappeared, she disappeared. Every time this thought appeared in his mind, a trace of ruthlessness and destruction would appear in Qin Yu's eyes. He was like a vicious beast that had lost control, driven by his instincts. He went to find another woman that was incomparably important to him. After losing Yu Qi, he absolutely could not lose Ningling as well. Perhaps this was the only obsession that Qin Yu had left. At this moment, darkness covered the skies. Its scope was so great that it could be seen from any corner of the world. It cast an endless shadow on the ground, as if eternal darkness were about to arrive. Although they were separated by a great distance, everyone couldn't help but reveal a deep fear in their eyes. This was a boundary so formidable that they didn't even dare to imagine it with their level of strength. They were like ants standing beside a volcano. Any strength that erupted was enough to burn them to ashes. Solitary Westgate's eyes widened. He already knew that Qin Yu's current boundary was something he couldn't estimate. But now, as he felt the rumbling darkness in the distant skies, his understanding of the upper limits of Qin Yu's strength was refreshed once more. But just what had happened that would cause Qin Yu to lose his composure like this? He could feel the bloodthirst and ruthlessness in the darkness aura. Shan Wugu's complexion was heavy. He took a deep breath. I fear that something has happened to either Ningling or Yu Qi. His eyes were filled with worry. At this time, Qin Yu gave off an incomparably unfamiliar feeling. All that was left was the aura of destruction and slaughter. This was clearly incomparably dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he might even suffer a backlash. Shan Wugu had grown up together with Qin Yu, so he had a good understanding of his friend's character. The more one cared about relationships, the more one would be hurt by them. If it was as he guessed, then Qin Yu was in danger. Solitary Westgate bitterly smiled. All we can do now is wait. With Qin Yu's current condition, even if we go there, we will only be sending ourselves to our deaths. It was too terrifying. The dark aura was like a bloody mouth that had been opened wide, ready to tear apart and devour anything that dared to stand in its way. The immortal origin was an honorific title that could roughly be interpreted as the origin of the immortal Tao. Even though almost none of the living beings in this world knew what the immortal Tao was. However, no one doubted the power of the immortal origin pool. When darkness wreaked havoc, only the areas under its protection could enjoy peace. Under the guidance of the immortal source, the new immortal sect had already been rebuilt. It took less than 100 years for it to regain some of the glory of the immortal sect. Presently, a few tens of immortal mountains floated in midair, and all of them were covered in lush and verdant forests. Countless immortal beasts fluttered about within them, and clouds and mist coiled around the depths of the mountains. The roars of beasts frequently resounded out from the continuous stretch of pavilions, and it seemed like the atmosphere of an immortal. But now, the peaceful atmosphere of the immortal sect no longer existed. Countless cultivators in loose robes and long sleeves gathered together, all of them looking towards the horizon as if they were facing a great enemy. The darkness surged forward like a tide, and one could hear the thunderous roars that pierced straight into the bottom of one's heart, making one tremble in fear. Although they were still a great distance away, all of the cultivators present understood that the target of the darkness was the immortal sect. Not too long ago, the immortal origin pool felt a powerful fluctuation of energy that crossed worlds. It should be a strength from the demon world. An immortal sect powerhouse said, "Could it be that powerhouses from the demon world have arrived?" Another immortal sect powerhouse asked, frowning, "Could it be that they still haven't given up?" Humph, with the protection of the immortal origin pool. So what if it is a descender from the demon world? Even though he said this, the immortal sect cultivator who said these words couldn't help but have his complexion turn pale. The darkness was like an abyss, like a prison. Looking at it from afar was one feeling, but only when one approached it could one truly feel its terror. At this moment, the dozens of floating immortal mountains fell into a deathly silence. The fog was scattered by strong winds. Thick, ancient trees were uprooted and sucked up into the air before shattering to pieces. Flying immortal birds cried out in alarm and panic as they flew far away. Wild beasts desperately clutched their heads, shivering on the ground. Bang! A sword shadow shot into the skies. A vast and boundless sword intent swept out in all directions. It stood in front of the darkness, seeming as if it could cut through all. The immortal sect cultivator holding the sword stepped forwards. His face was cold and solemn as he coldly said, The Immortal Origin Pool and the Dark Faction have already reached an agreement. No matter what the reason is, if you don't leave now, that will be considered a violation of the agreement. You will be punished by both sides. Bang! The aura of darkness instantly erupted, condensing into a terrifying hand that grasped forwards. The Immortal Sect Sword Cultivator was alarmed and angry. He never thought that the other party would attack without saying a single word. What caused his heart to race was that the strength contained within this strike was inconceivably formidable. Cut! With a loud shout, the sword shadow slashed down, colliding with the dark hand. The sword intent was full of momentum, but the result left everyone watching with wide eyes. In the instant of the collision, the sword shadow shattered, and the Immortal Sect Sword Cultivator was sent flying backwards. In midair, he had already exploded into pieces of flesh and broken bones, turning into a giant red flower. The dark hand didn't stop at all. It continued to smash towards the Immortal Sect people. A deep and cold roar echoed out from within the dark aura. "Give her back to me! How dare you, you evil creature! You dare to injure someone in my Immortal Sect! We respectfully ask the Immortal Origin Pool to attack and kill this demon." The Immortal Sect people were both shocked and angry. They fled in distress as they roared out. But as they looked at the darkness, they couldn't suppress the fear in their eyes. With the strength of the Immortal Sect Sword Cultivator, he had actually been killed in a single exchange. The strength of this demon that descended into this world was truly terrifying. But fear was fear. They didn't feel despair. This was because the Immortal Sect still had the Immortal Origin Pool. Or, to be more accurate, the Immortal Origin Pool was the foundation of the Immortal Sect's existence. We respectfully ask the Immortal Origin Pool to attack. The Immortal Sect cultivators roared out in unison. The fear in their eyes immediately vanished and was replaced with excitement. It was as if they could already see the Immortal Origin Pool taking action and defeating the darkness. But nothing happened. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, the dark hand smashed apart a floating celestial mountain. Some of the weaker Immortal Sect cultivators that hadn't left didn't even have time to scream before they were torn to pieces. Then a second mountain, a third mountain. The dark hand swept forwards with unstoppable momentum, destroying everything in its path. Miserable screams filled the air. The fleeing Immortal Sect cultivators all paled. They couldn't figure out why the Immortal Origin Pool hadn't responded. We respectfully ask the Immortal Origin Pool to attack. An Immortal Sect cultivator cried out. His chest was stained with blood as he looked towards the tallest celestial mountain. All of the Immortal Sect cultivators knew that the Immortal Origin Pool was there, but the only response he received was silence. With a pitiful smile, this Immortal Sect cultivator was swallowed up by the dark strength. With a loud bang, his aura completely vanished. "Give her back to me!" In the darkness, a roar rose up once more, filled with a reckless madness. Bang! Another hand of darkness appeared. The speed at which the Immortal Sect Immortal Mountain was being destroyed instantly doubled. "Run! We have to go to the Immortal Origin Pool." "The Immortal Origin Pool will definitely save us." The Immortal Sect cultivators' eyes turned red as they desperately fled. The strength of the darkness was too terrifying, so terrifying that anyone that tried to stop it had already been killed. Powerful cultivators could certainly escape, but there were always weaklings everywhere, even if it was an immortal sect that had risen once more. As more and more celestial mountains were destroyed, all that awaited them was destruction. And for these people with weak cultivations to be able to live in the immortal sect, they either had outstanding talent and were future pillars of the immortal sect, or they had family members that were powerhouses of the immortal sect. No matter which possibility it was, as more and more people were killed, the blood-red light in the eyes of the immortal sect cultivators became increasingly rich. The Immortal Origin Pool was an important area of the immortal sect. Without permission, no one was allowed to enter. Even if they were immortal sect cultivators, they were the same. A massive number of immortal sect cultivators gathered outside the tallest celestial mountain. Their blood-red eyes were filled with hatred and despair that couldn't be hidden. This was because the immortal origin pool had sealed off the celestial mountain, refusing them entry. Immortal origin pool, are you going to stare on helplessly as we are all killed today? An immortal sect cultivator roared, tears of blood flowing down his face. His family members had all been buried in the celestial mountain. The pain and suffering he felt in his heart was not something that outsiders could understand. The celestial mountain was silent. The immortal sect cultivator howled. His figure shot into the skies, colliding with the hands of darkness and instantly exploding. Let's go all out. I would rather die than tear off a piece of his flesh and blood. How can my immortal sect cultivators just sit here and wait for death? Whoosh, whoosh, figure after figure shot into the skies. Like moths flying into a flame, they hurtled towards the two hands of darkness. Loud explosions rang out one after another. In just several breaths of time, nearly half of the powerhouses that the immortal sect had accumulated over the last 100 years had died. A sigh echoed out from the celestial mountain. The seal suddenly opened, pulling in the remaining immortal sect cultivators. Space faintly twisted and a phantom appeared. It stared at the power of darkness and said, "These past years I've always felt uneasy. Now retribution has arrived." He lifted a hand and pressed it forwards. In an instant, trillions of sword lights appeared, weaving together and forming a blockade in front of him. Bang, bang. The two hands of darkness seemed to sense something. They abandoned the undestroyed celestial mountain and began to crazily bombard the trillions of sword lights. Scales were smashed apart by the sword lights, dispersing into the power of darkness. But the hands of darkness didn't stop. Instead, their bombardment became increasingly strong. "Give her back to me." Qin Yu stepped out from the darkness. His eyes turned pitch black as he stubbornly stared at the immortal source. His eyes tumbled with destruction and slaughter. Within the celestial mountain, the immortal sect cultivators that had been sucked in all fell to their knees. "Immortal source, we cannot let this person go." Over half of the immortal sect was destroyed by this person's hands. "We must make him pay with blood. I ask Immortal Source to kill this monster." The Immortal Source, Phantom, bitterly smiled. If he could smoothly kill Qin Yu, he would have already done so. Why would he have waited until now? He took a deep breath and stopped the immortal sect cultivators from speaking any further. He said, "What happened in the past was indeed my fault. Today, you have killed countless people and should have dispelled some of the evil in your heart. I hope that you can stop here." Qin Yu punched out, "Give her back to me." Bang! The sword light seal violently shook. The immortal source phantom's complexion changed. In the next moment, the entire seal began to shake. After it struck the edge of the seal, it was pushed back, and then it began to collapse inwards. Bang! With a loud explosion, the immortal source was knocked backwards. His phantom violently trembled, causing ripples to appear in his eyes. This strength was far stronger than he had expected. In the past, because I received a favor from someone, I had no choice but to act. I did not wish to do so. But I can tell you the truth. Before that unconscious woman could be sent out of this world, she had already dissipated. This matter is absolutely true. The immortal source spoke rapidly. What I left in this world is only a projection. Even if I am killed by you, I will only lose a bit of strength. If you can stop here, I will definitely repay you. I ask that you calmly consider this matter and make the right choice. The response he received was Qin Yu's howl. "Die. All of you deserve to die." Bang! His robes fluttered and his black hair flew backwards. Endless darkness energy erupted from his body, blotting out the skies. In the blink of an eye, the world fell into pitch black. Eternal night arrived. Chapter 1170. The wild killing intent corroded his mind. Qin Yu's will had completely fallen. Now that he was in the darkness, all he had left was destruction and slaughter. Kill, kill, kill. Everything in front of him would be sent to hell. Amidst endless howls, he would taste all the extreme pain in the world. The backlash of darkness had already begun. Once Qin Yu was completely assimilated, he would never have a chance to wake up. He would become a killing machine controlled by the will of darkness, forever falling into the abyss. As the killing intent became increasingly intense and Qin Yu was about to sink into oblivion, an icy cold aura was released from his mind. If there was a choice, the old turtle would be happy to watch Qin Yu play with himself to death. Then he could regain his freedom. But this was the vast young world. This shadow of the abyss was nothing more than mud in the snow. There was nowhere to hide. So Qin Yu could not die, at least not now. Master! Hurry and wake up, Master! Qin Yu's eyes that were filled with killing intent began to fluctuate. The darkness aura that filled the world suddenly stagnated. He took a deep breath. The darkness in his eyes slowly faded away. The first thing he saw was the pale faces of the immortal sect cultivators in the celestial mountains, filled with fear. That's right. At this moment, they were truly afraid. Just now, the immortal sect people had personally experienced Qin Yu's terrifying attacks after he was assimilated by the darkness. Even someone as powerful as the immortal origin could only barely resist his attacks and was beaten back and forth in a pitiful manner. Hating Qin Yu was a must, but fear dominated their minds. The immortal sect cultivators no longer hoped that they could kill him and take revenge for those who had died. Surviving was their greatest hope right now. The immortal origin phantom became even thinner. It was like a wisp of blue smoke that could be blown away with a single breath. Now that Qin Yu had finally stopped, he bitterly smiled and let out a long breath in his heart. What the immortal origin said before was correct. What was left in this world was only a projection. But to be able to separate from the main body and transcend worlds to exist for such a long time, it certainly wasn't that simple. Moreover, he had already inherited his own Tao inheritance in this world. If the projection was destroyed, his Tao inheritance would also disappear. To an immortal Tao cultivator, destroying their own Tao inheritance was even more difficult to bear than killing them. If possible, they certainly wouldn't want to give up. For you to wake up in time and avoid being devoured by the darkness is truly a cause for celebration. The immortal origin shadow clasped his hands together and squeezed out a smile. I wonder if you can think calmly for a moment. Qin Yu suddenly said, his voice hoarse to the extreme. Who told you to attack? The immortal origin phantom bitterly smiled. Back then, this old man had already sworn not to reveal even the slightest bit of information. I hope that you can understand. Qin Yu glanced at him, his pitch-black pupils flashing. All right, then I'll change the question. Who was your target? The immortal origin phantom fell silent for a moment. My mission is to capture 2 women from the demonic path's small world. Yu Qi and Ningling. If you can't capture all of them, then capturing any one of them will be considered as completing the mission. Qin Yu's heart sank and his voice became even colder. Are you saying that I can capture any one of them? The immortal origin phantom replied, Yes. Qin Yu said, Ningling, how did she disappear? Tell me everything you know. The immortal origin shadow hesitated for a long time. Qin Yu coldly snorted. Is it my current calmness that made you forget everything you experienced just now? The immortal origin phantom sucked in a deep breath. In the past, when I captured Ningling, she was in an unconscious state. Just as I was about to comply with our agreement and send her out of this world, without any warning or energy fluctuations, Ningling dissipated on her own. He paused for a moment and waved his hand. The space in front of him was isolated from the outside world. His voice became increasingly low and gloomy. I don't know if you know that in this world, there exists a heaven-piercing, secret cultivation technique called the Myriad Soul Tao. This technique splits one's soul and scatters it into the myriad heavens. This method allows the soul to constantly grow until it finally fuses with all of its individual bodies, allowing it to reach the heavens in a single bound and surpass the limits of cultivation. Because of a stroke of fate, I came to know a cultivator that cultivated the Myriad Soul Tao, and I just happened to have some understanding of this technique. When Ning Ling disappeared, the feeling she gave me was exactly the same as when the soul of the Myriad Soul Tao was taken back. Bang! The space around Qin Yu instantly shattered. His body gently shivered and darkness surged in his pupils, like raging waves crashing against a dam. Traces of blood appeared on the surface of his eyes, slowly spreading outwards like a blood-stained spider web. The old turtle trembled. He screamed out, "Master, steady yourself. You cannot be pulled into the darkness again. Otherwise, I won't have the ability to wake you up again." Now he had an approximate idea of what was going on, but he couldn't figure it out. Wasn't it just two trivial women? Was there really a need to be so excited? In this world, there was nothing more important than living. With Qin Yu's current cultivation, he could have as many women as he wanted with a flick of his finger. For him, to be tormented to the point of death for them was simply stupid to the extreme. Of course, the most important thing right now was that Qin Yu's life and death were inextricably linked together. Both of them were bound together for good or ill. Otherwise, he could do whatever he wanted. The immortal origin phantom panicked. He quickly waved his hand. Don't worry, don't worry. When the myriad soul Tao's soul dissipates, it will naturally return to its main body. It might not have truly dissipated. If you can find her main body, perhaps you might have a chance to save her. Qin Yu's eyes were blood red. After a long period of silence, he let out a long breath and said, "First question." The immortal origin phantom stiffened. Qin Yu said, "Tell me the answer, and I will spare you today. Otherwise—" He looked up, his blood-red eyes locking onto the phantom. "You can try and see if I can find your main body through this phantom." The immortal origin phantom's complexion changed. He stared at Qin Yu, his eyes cloudy and uncertain. A projection was a projection, even if it was a little special. Once it dissipated, it wouldn't leave behind any trace. To lock onto his main body through a projection was nearly impossible. But now, as he faced Qin Yu's blood-red eyes, the words of refusal rolled on the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't bring himself to say them. His intuition told him that if he really refused Qin Yu, there was a high chance that something horrifying would occur. In the past, the immortal origin had indeed promised not to reveal this matter. Otherwise, he would have to pay a heavy price. This price wasn't small, but it also depended on what it was compared to. For instance, if he continued to keep the secret, he would have to make an enemy out of Qin Yu, or perhaps, without any hesitation, the immortal origin chose, or perhaps, when one's cultivation reached his boundary, their intuition was often accurate. If he sold out that person from the past, it would indeed be a bit unfair and troublesome, but it was better than being relentlessly chased down by others. After spitting out a name, the immortal origin took a step back and fused into the celestial mountain. And at this time the beautiful immortal sect was shrouded in clouds and mist. Of the dozens of celestial mountains, there was only a single one left, and it was covered in scars. Everything else had been destroyed. Qin Yu silently repeated this name, firmly remembering it in his mind. Then he turned and vanished from sight. Who? The immortal sect cultivators all let out a long breath of relief. From the corner of their eyes, they could clearly feel the joy of surviving a calamity. Finally, they had survived. Half a month later, Qin Yu lifted a hand and traced Guling, or his hair. Then he shook his head and withdrew his hand. He glanced at the simple and honest man and the two young men and women beside him. They were already married and had a pair of children. He couldn't continue to treat Guling as a child that hadn't grown up. "All right, I'll send you off here." "Guling," Er's eyes turned red. Big brother Qin Yu. 100 years had passed, and it had only been half a month since they last met. Now he had to leave again. The words to urge him to stay were on the tip of her tongue, but she couldn't say them. This was because she knew why Qin Yu had left in such a hurry. Live a good life. Qin Yu smiled. He turned and said, Westgate, I'll have to ask you to take care of my little sister's family. I will take care of your matters. If there are any harvests, I will definitely send them to you. Solitary Westgate cupped his hands together. Then I'll leave everything to you. Shan Wugu lowered his head. Let's go. When we return, bring my sister-in-law and the others with you. Qin Yu said, Of course. He turned and walked away. He lifted a hand and punched out, shattering the vault of the heavens. If the vast Yang world could be said to be a vast ocean of islands, then Dark Bright World could be said to be the most unremarkable of them all. The world itself wasn't too large. In addition to the incomplete rules of the world, it was extremely rare for the native cultivators to step into the divine realm. But in terms of fame, Dark Bright World was actually quite extraordinary. This was because it had the land of chaos, the endless sea. This name sounded a bit familiar, but this was how it was called. After all, the world was vast, and it was normal to have the same name. Although the endless sea was within Dark Bright World, in the eyes of many people, it wasn't a part of Dark Bright World at all. The reason was simple. Deity realm cultivators were rare within Dark Bright World. But the endless sea had dangers that could even kill original divinities. Was this an attribute that a complete individual could possess? But no matter how one looked at it, if one wanted to enter the endless sea, they had to go to Dark Bright World first. Qin Yu stood on the seashore, looking at the ship swaying in the waves. He subconsciously narrowed his eyes, a dignified expression on his face. It wasn't that he was afraid before boarding the ship, but that his last experience at sea had left a deep impression on him. Icy sea. Qin, you didn't want to go to that damned place ever again. Board the ship. There was a deep roar from the bow of the ship. The one-eyed man's eyes were cold. He swept his eyes over the dense crowd on the shore, his expression not changing at all. Whoosh, whoosh. With the sound of breaking air, figures shot into the skies. Look, it's the Sly Fate clan Zorkon. He actually came. The one on the left, although he's wearing a veil, according to reliable sources, it's highly likely that he's a direct descendant of the fire-bathing bloodline. I also heard that the person who was born with knowledge from Xiangzhang Academy is also participating in the Endless Seas Grand Meeting. What in the world happened to attract so many young experts to the Endless Sea? It's really a dazzling starlight. It's awe-inspiring. The crew members discussed with awe and envy in their eyes. The one-eyed man coldly said, Shut up and do your job properly. This person's prestige was obviously high. The crew members who were reprimanded all shut up. Walking to the bow of the ship, the one-eyed man's eyes swept over the cultivators flying towards the ship. The corner of the one-eyed man's mouth curled up into a cold smile. After entering the endless sea of the land of chaos, it would be lucky if even half of these people could come out alive. Chapter 1171. Hey! Someone patted his shoulder. Qin Yu helplessly turned around and looked at the petite girl in front of him. She was called Master Yin. Her identity was a new companion Qin Yu met after entering Dark Bright World. Qin Yu, what are you daydreaming about? We've already boarded the ship. My brother and the others left first. Let's hurry. She pulled on Qin Yu. Let's go. There are no good spots left. I heard the scenery in the endless sea is extremely beautiful. Qin Yu calmly withdrew his hand and nodded. Okay. However, Yun Shi paid no heed to Zhang Xian's words. He continued chattering nonstop beside Zhang Xian, and when he got excited, he would even dance his hands and feet in joy. They smoothly boarded the ship. Yun Che's group of 3 had already occupied a spot on the 2nd floor, near the side of the ship. It wasn't too far forward, but the view was good. As for the third floor with the best view, only those who were strong enough and had a certain status had the qualifications to go there. Master Yin, come here. The leftmost youth stood up and waved. His eyes fell on Qinyu, revealing a bit of anger. He couldn't understand why Master Yin favored this boy so much. Besides his good looks, what else did he have? Master Yin squeezed Qinyu over and only let go when they were seated. She excitedly said, "Brother, you guys are amazing. You actually managed to get such a good spot." Yun Che smiled and waved. "It's all thanks to Zhou Cheng. His movement technique is the fastest, so we were able to get a spot first." Zhou Cheng was a taciturn young man with a shy personality. His slightly dark face blushed a little when he heard this. He waved his hand and said, "It's all thanks to Brother Huan. If not for him, this position would have been snatched away." Master Yin asked a few questions. It turned out that when they boarded the ship, Zhou Cheng was only a bit faster than the other group. Both sides arrived almost at the same time. Clearly, the other side chose to avoid them. Zhou Huan pretended to be calm, but he couldn't hide the pride in his eyes. "Hey, this is nothing. Some people are like this. The more you endure, the more arrogant they become. Just be a bit more forceful." Humph! Not far away, there were 3 cultivators at another table. One of them angrily snorted and glared at them. His 2 companions pulled him back, indicating with their eyes that he shouldn't cause trouble. Zhou Huan sneered in response. "Look, some people are like this. They look fierce on the outside, but are weak on the inside." "How laughable." Yun Che said, "All right, don't cause trouble." The scenery of the endless sea was really good. The seawater was clear and transparent. Sitting on the ship, one could clearly see the big fish swimming in the sea. This caused Yun Shi to shout excitedly. Zhou Huan joked around, causing Master Yun to laugh even more happily. Zhou Cheng sat at the side and only squeezed out a few words when asked by Master Yun, causing Yun Che to shake his head inwardly. He thought to himself that his little sister would never like a toothless gourd. The atmosphere was quite harmonious. Only Qinyu frowned inwardly. He swept his eyes over the 3 cultivators not too far away. It reeked of blood. It wasn't dense, but it gave him a very sinister feeling. The aura of slaughter lingered around them. These 3 people weren't as ordinary as they seemed on the surface. Even though a conflict had yet to break out, it was clear that the other party had already marked Yun Shi, Yun Che, and the others down in his heart. There was a trace of hesitation in his eyes. Whatever, they were going to travel together. Just reminding them before leaving was enough. The attributes of the endless sea were the same as dark bright world. The first half of the journey was very peaceful. From time to time, one could see islands dotting the blue sea. Most of them were lush with trees, and there were groups of monkeys living on them. When they saw the ship pass by, they were abnormally happy. There were some courageous monkeys that dove into the sea in groups, climbing onto the ship and begging the cultivators. Looking at their familiar movements, it was clear this wasn't their first time doing this. They actually had good harvests. Yun Shi was easily asked for several pills. He hugged a red-furred monkey, his face full of joy. Looking at Yun Che's bitter smile, the quality of the pills should be quite good. Zhou Huan naturally followed Yun Shi's example. She was even more generous and attracted a large group of monkeys to surround her. From time to time, they would bow to him, attracting a lot of attention in the clamor. But this excitement had nothing to do with Qinyu. He sat where he was without moving and didn't make any movements to chase them away. The monkeys on the ship only looked at him from afar and didn't come over to ask for anything. As the ship moved further away, the monkeys ate their harvests and jumped back into the sea to swim back to the island. Yun Shi was very fond of the little red-furred monkey in her arms. Most of the pills she gave out went into this monkey's mouth. But when it was time to leave, this monkey didn't hesitate at all. It didn't care about Yun Shi's shouts at all, causing her to reveal a depressed expression. Yun Che lightly said, "These monkeys have lived in the endless sea for generations and already know how terrifying the depths are. Of course they won't stay on the ship." Yun sure curled his lips. What a heartless little thing. It can still leave the next island. If I see it again, I definitely won't feed it pills. These words were truly childish. Yun Che bitterly smiled. He was a little worried. Was it a mistake to bring her into the endless sea because he couldn't resist the pestering? But as long as they were careful, there shouldn't be any problems. Moreover, there might be a great lucky chance in the endless sea this time. Thinking of this, Yun Che's eyes flashed. He calmly glanced at Qin Yu, who was resting with his eyes closed. On the 5th day after the ship entered the endless sea, the calm days were over. The incomparably clear sea water gradually became turbid. The wind and waves became stronger. The howling wind entered their ears, revealing a bit of gloominess. The first half of the endless sea was about to end. Next was the real land of chaos, also known as the Sea of Despair. Not to mention the God Realm experts, there were already dozens of famous original God Realm experts who had fallen there. Of course, masochism was a minority. There was no need to take risks for no reason. Everyone was willing to take risks and enter the land of chaos because there were benefits to be had. The second half of the endless sea was dangerous enough, but it also gave birth to many fortunes. There were countless legends about the various lucky chances in the land of chaos. Basically, any cultivator who ventured into the land of chaos and managed to leave alive would more or less gain something from it. But strictly speaking, this was only a basic benefit because the main purpose of entering the endless sea was to become famous. It was rumored that there was a special test in the endless sea. Any cultivator who could pass it was talented and had amazing potential. If they were trained with resources, most of them would have great achievements. Thus, any cultivator who left the endless sea alive, no matter how strong or weak they were, would become delicious cakes that were fought over by all sides. For those cultivators with limited backgrounds who hoped to break free from the shackles of cultivation and reach a higher realm, this was an excellent way to advance. For this reason, they were willing to take risks, even if they knew that the chances of dying in the land of chaos were more than 50%. Qin Yu's goal was to become famous because he wanted to enter the Peach Blossom Land. The Peach Blossom Land was an orthodoxy created by the strongest person under the ruler realm. It was called a holy land by all the heavens and realms. It wasn't easy to gain recognition and enter. Thus, ordinary fame wouldn't help Qin Yu achieve his goal. He wanted to become famous. There were many ways to become famous. For example, killing some strong creatures in the land of chaos. Of course, one had to be at least at the upper original God realm. Or perhaps they had to go through the land of chaos' most terrifying and desperate trials. But all of this depended on luck. No one could guarantee that they would encounter such a thing. What Qin Yu wanted was to be absolutely safe. Thus, he chose another path, to pass through the land of chaos and leave the endless sea from another direction. He had forgotten whether or not the endless sea had the same name. Since it had the word endless in its name, its area was naturally astonishing. As mentioned before, the profound, bright world wasn't large. According to logic, it was impossible for it to contain the astonishing scale of the endless sea. There was a high chance that this involved problems with space. At the same time, many cultivators believed that the endless sea didn't belong to the profound, bright world. But none of this was important. What was important was that Qin Yu, he wanted to break through the endless sea that was known as the Endless. Of course, this was difficult. According to what Qin Yu knew, in the endless years of recorded history, only one person had ever succeeded in doing this. And when he accomplished this, he had already stepped into the original God realm. As for Qin Yu, strictly speaking, his boundary was still at the divine realm. If everything went smoothly, then Qin Yu could cross the endless sea with his divine realm cultivation. That would be enough for him to become famous and he would surely be able to enter the Peach Blossom Land. In this world there were always accidents. What Qin Yu could do now was to do his best. As for what the result would be, that would depend on his luck. But no matter what, he had to enter the Peach Blossom Land. Only then would he have a chance to approach the woman who planted the peaches and check on Ningling and even Yu Qi's situation. Immortal Source's mission was to capture any one of them. In other words, in the eyes of that person, they were of equal value. Moreover, at about the same time, the two of them had dissipated. In this sort of situation, Qin Yu couldn't help but think about it. Just what was the relationship between Ningling and Yu Qi? Or, to be more precise, what was their relationship with the woman who planted the peaches? He took a deep breath and suppressed the tumbling thoughts in his chest. Qin Yu opened his eyes and looked towards the endless sea in front of him. The sky was dark and low. Strong winds howled in the air, stirring up turbid seawater and causing it to rumble endlessly. Traces of a wild and violent aura were constantly released, causing one's heartbeat to accelerate uncontrollably. "Stop the ship!" The one-eyed large man roared. He indifferently looked towards the endless sea, a trace of fear in his eyes. The scar on his face that had taken away one of his eyes was obtained many years ago in the land of chaos. He had nearly lost his life there. Even though he had come here many times, he still couldn't help but recall the memories of the past. A chill crawled up from the depths of his heart. "Everyone, our ship can only reach this point. We will stop here for a month." The one-eyed large man roared out loud. "Remember, we only have a month. There will be no more waiting after that. Now, everyone can enter the sea." Whoosh, whoosh, there was the sound of breaking air above their heads. The cultivators on the third level of the ship turned into beams of light that howled into the land of chaos. There seemed to be a change in the space in front of them. The cultivators that flew in soon faded away, vanishing into the wind and waves. Orkan, direct inheritance of the fire-bathing lineage. Xiangzhang Academy's secret technique. Heavenly Sword Sex cultivator. Cries of alarm rose up one after another. Everyone revealed looks of amazement. Yunche took a deep breath. He said, "Let's go." Several people rose up. Yunshi turned and stamped his feet. "Qin Yu, what are you doing in a daze? Hurry up. No one will be waiting for you this time. Let's go." Qin Yu stood up and cupped his hands together. "Thank you all for your care and concern." Yun Shi's eyes widened. "Brother Qin wants to go alone?" Yun Che frowned. "The depths of the endless sea are filled with dangers. It is dangerous to travel alone." Yun Shi hurriedly nodded. "My big brother is right. It is too dangerous for you to go alone. You should come with us." Qin Yu shook his head. "I appreciate everyone's good intentions, but there are some reasons that I can't speak of, so I will continue on my own." He took a step forward and paused for a moment. "Those 3 people from before, you had best be careful." Not wanting to be entangled with them any longer, his figure flashed and he flew away. Yun Shi watched him fly away, a look of disappointment on his face. This left Zhou Huan very angry. He roared out, "Who does he think he is? He dares to rush into the endless sea alone? He's just waiting to lose his life. He even warned us to be careful. Do you think the 3 of them would dare to harm us? How laughable!" Yun Che raised a hand to interrupt him. "Fellow Taoist Qin has good intentions. In any case, there is nothing wrong with being cautious." He glanced at the trio from the corner of his eyes and saw that they had already left. Even though he did not pay any attention to them, he did not sense when they left at all. His heart shuddered. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed Yun Shi's hand and said, "Let's go. If fate wills it, we might meet again." Chapter 1172. The Endless Sea was known as the Land of Chaos. To the warriors below the original God Realm, it was a perilous place. However, in Qin Yu's eyes, it was several levels lower than the black cold sea in the deepest part of the abyss. Not to mention, Qin Yu was much stronger than when he entered the cold sea. Comprehending light and darkness as one gave him more benefits than just being able to use the power of the abyss in the vast Yang world. In this world, as long as there was light, there would be shadows. This was a part of darkness. Light and darkness were opposites, but they coexisted. As long as they existed, it would be Qin Yu's domain. Wild winds roared, stirring up turbid waves. Loud rumbling sounds entered his ears. Qin Yu calmly moved forward, his body surrounded by darkness. He was like a black shadow, hiding all of his aura as he moved deeper into the land of chaos. The reason was simple. Qin Yu's goal this time was to cross the endless sea. As long as he could do this, it would be enough for him to become famous. On this basis, it would be better if he could avoid some troubles. Hiding in the darkness and avoiding unnecessary accidents. Qin Yu's plan was excellent, but accidents were called accidents because they weren't part of his plans. Qin Yu stopped in the darkness and looked into the distance. A wild aura was being released without restraint. In this wild aura he felt a strange fluctuation. His expression became strange. A secret realm had opened. As mentioned before, the land of chaos in the second half of the Endless Sea was terrifying, but it also gave birth to many lucky chances. Secret realms were one of the most attractive ones. Secret realms that were created for unknown reasons were often guarded by powerful creatures. After killing them, one could reap the rewards. This was one of the options Qin Yu had considered to become famous, but because it was uncertain, he eliminated it in the end. But now, it seemed Qin Yu's luck wasn't bad. Not long after entering the land of chaos, he encountered a secret realm. Although the aura of heaven and earth was chaotic, Qin Yu could still feel the aura of cultivators, and there were many of them. It seemed that the opening of this secret realm had attracted many people. Perhaps a fierce battle had already broken out outside the secret realm. It had to be known that more than half of the cultivators that entered the land of chaos were killed, but a significant portion of them died at the hands of their companions. Should he go and join in the fun? Qin Yu was a bit hesitant. Rushing through the mystic realm was indeed one of the best ways to become famous. Perhaps there might even be unexpected harvests there, but this would clearly delay him. Qin Yu only had a month to pass through the Endless Sea. Compared to this, the fame gained from exploring secret realms was much smaller. Forget it, he shouldn't meddle too much. As long as he could cross the Endless Sea, he would be able to achieve his goal. He gathered his thoughts and turned to leave. Once the fluctuations of the mystic realm's opening spread out, more and more cultivators would be drawn over. This place would soon become a place of trouble. Since he didn't want to get involved in this mess, it was better to leave as soon as possible. Right at this moment, the sound of something tearing through the air suddenly rang out. Two figures, one in front and one behind, tore through the wind and rushed over. The one running for her life was a woman. As she saw Qin Yu in the darkness, her eyes brightened and she rushed towards him without hesitation. "Save me, fellow Taoist." The one chasing him was also a woman. Her gaze was as cold as a knife. Qin Yu flashed backwards. He wasn't interested in blocking a saber for someone else, even if the fleeing woman had a somewhat beautiful appearance. She didn't think Qin Yu would react so quickly. He didn't even have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. The woman running for her life rolled her eyes. As she felt the fierce aura of the crazy woman behind her, she couldn't help but feel fear. She flung her hand and threw a spear at Qin Yu. Qin Yu frowned and was about to continue dodging when he suddenly stopped. "Pa!" He reached out a hand and grasped the spear. In the world of his mind, the old turtle was extremely excited. That's right, it's the aura of a pure soul. Qin Yu's eyes flashed and his grip on the spear tightened. The old turtle was the shadow of the abyss. After defecting, he could no longer obtain the recognition of the abyss. If he wanted to live, he had to constantly replenish his strength. This was the meaning behind the existence of the nightmare beast world. After entering the vast Yang world, How to allow the old turtle to survive for a long time had become a problem placed in front of Chinyu. Originally, Chinyu was thinking of entering the Peach Blossom Spring first, and then borrowing the strength of the so-called Holy Land to search for treasures that could help the old turtle replenish his strength. But he never imagined that he would have a harvest today. Although he didn't know exactly what mysteries the old turtle possessed, there was no doubt that the little blue lamp valued him. At this moment, Chinyu made his decision. He would rush into this mystic realm in front of him. The woman chasing him shouted out loud, "Give me the bead!" She lifted a hand and pointed at Chinyu. The air suddenly exploded, emitting an extremely sharp aura. Chinyu flicked his sleeves and space shook like a tide, instantly drowning out the sharp aura. The woman chasing him coughed as she was shaken away. She deeply looked at Chinyu and decisively turned to leave. In the blink of an eye, she vanished into the sea. As for the woman being chased, her reaction was even faster. She had long since vanished without a trace. These two little girls were quite smart. Otherwise, Chinyu wouldn't have minded letting them have a taste of what it was like to provoke him. He didn't want to waste any more time with them. He took several steps forwards, his figure piercing through the waves. The mystic realm was at the bottom of the sea. To be more precise, it was an independent space. The strength that came from the mystic realm pushed aside the wild seawater, forming an empty area. In normal circumstances, the higher the level of a mystic realm, the stronger the strength it released and the larger the independent space it formed would be. Chinyu fell into the sea. Looking at the mystic realm in front of him, he was able to roughly judge the range of this mystic realm. It wasn't particularly large. At most, it was a medium-level mystic realm. This was a bit strange. A mystic realm that could produce beads that could supplement the old turtle's strength was actually only a medium-level mystic realm. Chinyu's eyes flashed with puzzlement, but since he had come here, he would find out the answer sooner or later. As he expected, there were already many cultivators gathered outside the mystic realm. Feeling the residual fluctuations in the seawater, it was clear that they had already begun fighting. Chinyu soon found the reason why everyone was fighting each other before the mystic realm had fully opened. In the area in front of him, there was an incomparably massive black stone. There was a crack on the surface of this black stone that constantly spewed out light. It was clear that this black stone was the carrier of this mystic realm. With a whistling sound, a sphere shot out from the crack. It passed through the empty area and shot out from the mystic realm. Bang! A struggle instantly erupted. Over a dozen cultivators began fighting. Chinyu hesitated for a moment and didn't join the fray. This was because the old turtle had told him that the sphere was only stained with a bit of its aura. The true treasure was still within the mystic realm. Several unfriendly eyes fell on Chinyu, but that was all. Before the mystic realm had fully opened, no one was willing to start a fight. The struggle for the bead soon came to an end. The cultivator who succeeded paled. He tightly grasped the bead in his hand. It was clear he had paid a price. As for the other competing cultivators, although they all had unfriendly expressions, they restrained themselves. Chinyu's eyes flashed. It seemed that the two women who had been chasing and running had a grudge between them. And it wasn't just for the bead. This thought flashed for a moment before disappearing. No matter what the truth was, it had nothing to do with Chinyu, and he didn't care about it at all. Chinyu's eyes fell on the crack in the black stone and the light that constantly spewed out. He narrowed his eyes. He wanted the treasures within this mystic realm. An hour later, there were many more cultivators gathered in the mystic realm than before. One of them looked at Chinyu for a brief moment. It was him. This person was one of the 3 people who had clashed with Zhou Huan on the ship. He never thought he would be separated from his companions and appear here alone. But at this time, Chinyu wasn't in the mood to care about him. This was because the crack in the black stone grew larger and larger. The mystic realm was about to open. Bang! Suddenly, a deep rumbling sound came from the black stone. The empty space formed by the seawater suddenly stabilized. This meant that the mystic realm had opened. Let's go! The treasure is ours. If anyone dares to compete for it, we will kill them. Without any hesitation, everyone charged into the empty space. But after entering the empty space, they discovered that they still couldn't pass through the crack and enter the mystic realm within the black stone. How hateful! This is the Selection Mystic Realm. A cultivator roared. The land of chaos was famed for its chaos. The mystic realms it produced were also incredibly chaotic, with all sorts of things existing. The so-called Selection Mystic Realm was one of the more disgusting ones. Once it opened, it would allow cultivators to enter and open up a space. But this didn't mean that they could smoothly enter the mystic realm. On the contrary, the true test had only just begun. The Selection Mystic Realm only allowed a limited number of cultivators to enter. If the number of cultivators was exceeded, the entrance to the mystic realm would be sealed. If it was forcefully opened, the mystic realm would self-destruct and no one would obtain any benefits. Scram! With a roar, a cultivator attacked. He punched a person beside him and sent them flying away. This empty space was the selection area. When the number of people decreased enough to satisfy the mystic realm's opening quota, it would open on its own and pull those chosen into the mystic realm. Then the mystic realm would hide itself and the cultivators that were excluded would lose all chances. Competition won from the start. The competition entered a white-hot stage. Besides the companions that were with them, everyone else was an enemy. It was because of this that most cultivators that entered the land of chaos chose to travel with their companions. Besides those that were extremely confident in themselves, or those that didn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth, it was rare for them to travel alone. This was also the reason why Yun Che had asked Qin Yu to stay, and why Zhou Huan had ridiculed him. Qin Yu didn't enter. There were too many people right now. It wouldn't be too late to wait until a batch was eliminated before making a move. In short, he had to obtain the treasures in this mystic realm. The people in front of him were fighting each other to the death. They spat out blood and screamed in pain. In Qin Yu's eyes, this was meaningless. This was because the result had been decided the moment he saw the bead. Arrogant? In Qin Yu's eyes, this couldn't be considered arrogant at all. With the strength of these cultivators, they simply didn't have the qualifications to contend with him. However, it was still necessary to be cautious. No one knew whether or not the other side was hiding some sort of powerful trump card. Qin Yu wasn't the only one waiting. After all, the later he entered the stage, the more strength he could preserve. Everyone understood the logic of waiting to reap the benefits of others. Red Feather was also one of them. As soon as he arrived, he discovered Qin Yu and immediately frowned. In fact, Red Feather couldn't explain why he always felt a restlessness in his heart whenever he faced Qin Yu. It was because of this that when he was on the ship, he joined forces with his companions to stop the tyrannical Scarlet Flame. His instincts told him that it was best not to be enemies with Qin Yu. But now, Qin Yu had appeared here, and the treasures in the mystic realm were Red Feather's mission. He had to obtain them no matter what. He took a deep breath. It seemed that a conflict was inevitable this time. Qin Yu suddenly looked up at Red Feather. His eyes were indifferent, without any fluctuations of emotion. But this gaze caused Red Feather to stiffen. An icy chill surged out from the depths of his heart, as if he would freeze over. Fear flooded his mind. In the next moment, in Red Feather's eyes, Qin Yu attacked. He stepped forwards and directly broke into the space outside the mystic realm. What welcomed him was swift and fierce attacks from 3 different directions. Entering the stage late could certainly preserve one's strength, but at the same time he would become a target for the combined attacks of all the cultivators present. Bang! Dense darkness erupted in an instant, like sticky ink, filling the entire space in an instant. Ah, what is this? Break for me! Screw off! Angry roars echoed out from the darkness, accompanied by muffled bangs. Figures were sent, flying backwards. Blood gushed out from their noses and mouths. Their eyes filled with fear as they stared into the darkness. Only by personally experiencing it would they know what had just happened. If it weren't for that person showing mercy, they would have already died. Although treasures were good, they also needed to be alive. The cultivators that escaped from death didn't dare to stay any longer. They quickly left. They were already injured and in a weakened state. It was inevitable that some of them would have crooked thoughts. Of course, the faster they escaped, the better. Finally, when the darkness quieted down, the entire area outside the mystic realm also fell into a deathly silence. Those that hadn't entered the stage yet and were waiting for the fishermen to take advantage of the situation suddenly widened their eyes. Their atoms apple-bobbed up and down, their mouths filled with bitterness. The script shouldn't have been like this. We haven't even entered the stage. We haven't even had the time to use our various methods, and yet we're finished like this? They were unwilling, extremely unwilling, but so what? They had seen the fate of those people just now with their own eyes. Even if they were in their place, how good could their fates be? Red Feather gulped. He stared at the darkness in front of him, rejoicing that he had stopped Crimson Flame from attacking. As for the mission, that's right, the young master had ordered him to obtain something from this mystic realm at all costs. For this, he had even been given a powerful treasure. But now, Red Feather was certain that even if he used the treasure the young master had given him, the result wouldn't change. At all costs, cough, cough, that didn't mean that he would make a fearless sacrifice. Simply put, Red Feather wasn't prepared to die. Today's events would surely spread out, and he believed that the young master would understand. He turned and left. A thought appeared in Red Feather's mind. This endless sea test had truly attracted a massive number of freaks. But who was Chinyu? He had never heard of such a terrifying, dark strength before. He had to inform the young master as soon as possible so that he could prepare ahead of time. Pa! With a light sound, the space opened up by the mystic realm completely vanished along with the darkness. What vanished together with it was the black stone in front of everyone. Chapter 1173. Somewhere in the land of chaos, the incomparably turbid seawater violently rocked back and forth beneath the pull of an unknown strength. A gray-yellow scaled fish with bloodshot eyes was hiding in the seabed, waiting for prey to be delivered to its mouth. Suddenly, tumbling fluctuations erupted from the seabed. Space was torn apart, and a figure walked out. The large fish that had been waiting for a prey for a long time didn't even consider where this person had come from. Driven by its burning desire to eat, it attacked. The seabed sand instantly exploded. The large fish held out, its speed reaching the extreme. It opened its mouth to reveal sharp fangs. Pa! With a light sound, the large fish that was as straight as an arrow slumped to the ground. Its headless corpse was swept away by the seawater. In the end, it had become food for other hunters. Chinyu glanced at the corpse of the fish that had sneak attacked him. He stepped forwards, tearing through the seawater and soaring into the skies. Voila! The seawater shattered and his figure shot into the skies. His eyes swept around, and after careful comparison, he came to a conclusion. The place where he appeared was roughly the same as when he first entered the mystic realm. The only difference was a bit, but this wasn't important. What Chinyu wanted was to cross the endless sea. No matter which direction he entered, the result would be the same. It was just that this plan might have to change. He flipped his palm and light flashed. A lotus flower appeared. At this time, this lotus flower was only the size of a palm, but it was still quite domineering as it blotted out the skies. In fact, in order to capture it, Chinyu had spent a great deal of effort. This was Chinyu's greatest harvest in the Black Stone mystic realm, and it was also what the old turtle was so excited to obtain. The spear that flew out from the crack in the black stone could be seen as a lotus seed, but it wasn't its true seed. It was quite complex. Chinyu had to spend some time to understand, but there was no need to elaborate further, In short, the lotus flower contained a massive amount of strength that could supplement the old turtle's soul. But its greater use was that it was a key. By holding this lotus flower, one could obtain permission to enter a mystic realm deep within the land of chaos. This was information that automatically appeared in Qin Yu's mind after he obtained the lotus flower. The old turtle had also determined that it was indeed something that had split off from something. In other words, it was very likely that there was a real treasure behind the lotus that made the old turtle drool. The soul strength contained within the lotus was enough for the old turtle to eat a great meal. If he could obtain its main body, then he wouldn't need to worry about extending the life of the old turtle for a long period of time in the future. This was enough for Qin Yu to change his initial thoughts. Moreover, if a selection mystic realm was used as the test, the level of the mystic realm would definitely be extremely high. If he could rush through it, he might be able to achieve his goal of becoming famous. Compared to crossing the endless sea, it would be much safer. With a thought, he put away the lotus flower. He had already made his decision. He took a step forward and headed in the direction of the lotus flower. In the end, plans couldn't keep up with changes. Once again, Qin Yu used his own experience to prove the truth of these words. But in reality, if someone had an eye big enough to see the entire land of chaos, they would discover something very interesting. At the edge of the land of chaos, there were many cultivators heading in the same direction. Although they were taking different routes, their destination was the same. They were like a school of fish that had been baited. They were flocking together, but they didn't know what sort of fate awaited them. Perhaps there were some intelligent fish that had already sensed something was wrong, but the benefits in front of them were far too great. So great that they were willing to dive deep into danger even though they knew it was dangerous. Of course, they had the mentality of being lucky. But what was more important was their confidence in their own strength. After all, a cultivator that could swallow the bait into their stomach was inevitably strong. Outside, dark, bright world. The darkness that filled the empty space between worlds was called the void boundary. It was impossible for normal life forms to survive in the void boundary. But this didn't mean that there were no dangers in the void boundary. On the contrary, the void boundary was so terrifying that even an original soul realm cultivator wouldn't dare to stay there for too long. And now, in the void boundary outside dark, bright world, 6 figures stood facing each other. Although they had restrained their auras, the pressure they naturally released still deterred the entire world. The terrifying life forms in the void boundary retreated far away, not daring to approach at all. One of them broke the silence. That thing wants to escape. Are you and I really not going to interfere? If you and I compete, dark bright world will inevitably be destroyed. How about we follow our previous agreement and gamble on our luck? The third person said, what if it really escapes? That is its luck. The fourth person's voice was firm and sonorous. Could it be that with our status, you and I are going to go back on our word? The void boundary fell silent. He didn't speak. The other two clearly tacitly agreed to this. The first person sneered, then let's wait. That thing in the depths of the endless sea had been discovered long ago. It was just that it hadn't matured yet, and everyone was afraid of each other, so it was allowed to live until today. Now it had finally matured. That was why the endless seas test had begun. Everyone had already placed their chess pieces. Now it was time to see whose chess piece was stronger and who could obtain that thing. As for escaping, humph humph, he was just saying it. Would the few of them really watch helplessly as it escaped? Qin Yu should have been one of the first people to know that his trip to the mystic realm wasn't simple. This was because on the way there, someone had delivered his head to him from 1,000 miles away. Of course, the initial goal of the person who delivered his head was to kill Qin Yu and reduce a competitor. The result was obvious. He had chosen the wrong target, so he could only deliver his head to Qin Yu. A milky white stone in his storage treasure became Qin Yu's spoils of war. The reason this stone was mentioned was because its attributes were nearly the same as the lotus flower that Qin Yu had obtained. In other words, the stone and the lotus flower belonged to the same object. When they were split off, they were both keys to the mystic realm. However, when the two objects were placed together, an accident occurred. The lotus flower suddenly took root and swallowed the white stone. Or, it was more accurate to say that it completely plundered the soul strength contained in the white stone. Thus, the white stone turned to ash and the lotus flower shined with brilliant colors, becoming extremely dazzling. The old turtle wiped away the saliva in his mouth for a long time. He used all his strength to barely suppress the urge to swallow the lotus flower. The lotus flower could extend one's life, and the old turtle's fear of death was one of the best in the world. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was for him to suppress the desire to eat the lotus flower. This also showed how much the old turtle coveted the object that had split off the lotus flower and the white stone. For this, he could even suppress the urge to extend his own life. For a peak expert of the death-fearing world, this was an incredibly difficult and inconceivable task. "Master, you have to help me get it. You have to." Qin Yu ignored him. His eyes flashed and his thoughts spun. The current situation was that there was an extremely high-level mystic realm in the depths of the land of chaos. An object in this mystic realm had split off into individual parts that contained its own power and scattered them outside, becoming the keys to enter the mystic realm. Since he had encountered people who delivered their heads thousands of miles away during his journey, there was a high chance that the number of keys wasn't just 3 or 5. The true number was probably astonishing. Now, there was a problem. How powerful would something that could split into so many keys be? What was its goal in doing this? Qin Yu took a deep breath and rubbed between his eyebrows. He felt as if he had stepped into a massive net. It wouldn't be a problem for him to withdraw now, but could he really do so? Disregarding the matter of extending the life of the old turtle, just the appearance of this mystic realm was likely to attract all the powerful cultivators in the land of chaos to gather here. The chances of him becoming famous here were far greater than crossing the endless sea. Whatever, he would take things one step at a time. As long as he was a bit more cautious, with Qin Yu's current strength, it would be difficult for him to be killed. Of course, courting death was an exception. 5 days later, Qin Yu had already guessed that a massive number of cultivators would gather outside the mystic realm where the seeds were scattered. But after arriving, Qin Yu discovered that he had underestimated the ability of something in this mystic realm to split off seeds. There were a lot of people. At a glance, there were hundreds of them. Even if many of these cultivators came in teams, there should still be over 100 seeds that had been obtained. And now there were people like Qin Yu who were constantly rushing over. It was hard to estimate the final number of seeds. If a cultivator dared to enter the land of chaos and risk their lives for a bright future, then at the very least they were smart enough to use their brains. What Qin Yu could think of, they could also think of. As they gathered in front of the mountain, their complexions weren't too good. Oh, I forgot to mention that according to Qin Yu's senses, what he finally found was this mountain in front of him. It broke through the sea and pointed towards the heavens. The mountain was steep and smooth, without any vegetation growing on it. From afar, it looked like an incomparably massive stalactite that had been placed upside down in the sea. It seemed that there was still some time before the mystic realm opened. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He turned and drew back some distance. Darkness wove around him, forming a black cloud. Qin Yu sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes in meditation. He was confident, but not arrogant. Following this, there was likely to be a great battle. Whether it was the cultivators gathered outside the mystic realm or the mystic realm itself, none of them were destined to be peaceful. Adjusting himself and maintaining his peak condition was certainly the best choice. As Qin Yu was meditating behind closed doors, Yunche and the others took action and rescued a woman from the jaws of a wild creature from the endless sea. This woman was enchanting and also had a way with words. It didn't take much effort for her to become a member of the group. From time to time, she would look up at Yunche, who was at the front of the group. Every time this happened, an unnatural expression would appear on his face. The corner of the woman's mouth curled up. Her expression was somewhat bashful. Her pair of watery eyes glanced at him even more. Master Yin looked at her big brother and then at the woman who had been rescued. Her lips parted slightly. She thought that she had worried for nothing all these years. So her big brother's sexual orientation wasn't a problem. He liked women. Yun Che angrily patted her head and scolded her in a low voice. "What are you thinking about all day long? Hurry up and be careful." Master Yin giggled, not angry at all. She thought that this blockhead of a brother of hers had finally blossomed after several hundred years. She had to grasp this chance and not miss it. She moved closer to the woman, and soon the two of them were holding hands. From time to time, they would whisper to each other, their smiles bright and beautiful. 2 days later, the woman who had been rescued handed something to Yun Che. Her face was flushed red, and she said that she wanted to repay them for saving her life. Yun Che declined several times without success. Looking at the woman's flushed face, he finally accepted the item. Soon, the group adjusted their direction and rushed deep into the land of chaos. Chapter 1174. Qin Yu discovered that he had guessed something wrong. Strictly speaking, whether it was right or wrong, it didn't matter too much to him. But now that someone else was involved, his attitude towards this matter had changed. He thought about ignoring it, but after thinking about it again and again, he still couldn't remain calm. Qin Yu glanced at the chattering Yun Shi from afar before turning to look at Yun Che, who had a gleeful smile on his face. Passing over Zhou Huan and Zhou Cheng, his eyes fell on the woman in the middle of the group. Coincidentally, he had seen this woman before. She was the woman who had tried to use him as a shield before the Black Stone mystic realm opened. If this was the case, Qin Yu would at most sigh and say that the world was truly full of coincidences. But not too far away, he saw the other woman who had tried to kill this woman. He felt a bit dizzy, but this was the situation. And more importantly, these two women acted as if they were strangers. Qin Yu judged that there was some enmity between these two women. This was why they had disregarded the mystic realm and fought to the death for the bead. Of course, he was wrong now. But there was one thing he was sure of. These two women knew each other, but now they acted as if they didn't know each other. There was definitely something strange going on. The darkness around him became even thicker, completely covering him up. No matter how carefully he observed, he was still able to sense several vague eye contact between these two women. There really was a problem. A thoughtful look crossed his face. Qin Yu suddenly lifted a hand and pointed a finger between his eyebrows. The old turtle cried out miserably, "Master, I am very weak right now. Please use me sparingly." Qin Yu's lips twitched. He was speechless. Of course, he didn't believe his nonsense. Although the old turtle was a bit weak right now, borrowing a bit of his strength wouldn't affect him too much. His eyes instantly turned dark. But this was different from Qin Yu's darkness incarnation. It was even more unfathomable, because this was the strength of the will of the abyss. The two women in Qin Yu's eyes underwent an astonishing change. Their bodies shined and black chains wrapped around them. Runes surged on the surface of these chains. As his eyes focused on these runes, Qin Yu discovered something else. What condensed these chains was actually a strange soul force. The aura was cold and gloomy, but in truth, it came from the same source as the soul strength contained in the lotus in Qin Yu's hand. He closed his eyes and opened them again. The darkness vanished. Qin Yu rubbed his eyebrows. With the intensity of his soul, borrowing the strength of the old turtle was a great burden. If this continued, it was fine. But if this continued, and without considering whether the old turtle could persist, his eyes might explode first. But right now, Qin Yu didn't have any thoughts of thinking about this. After his mind eased a little, he let go and let out a long breath. It was clear that these two women were related to the mystic realm. If he kept a close eye on them, he might be able to obtain some unexpected harvests. Of course, preventing Yun Che, Yun Shi, and the others from falling into danger was also an important reason. After all, they had traveled together for some time, and the siblings had been taking good care of him. Of course, preventing Yun Che and Master Yin from falling into danger was also an important reason. After all, they had journeyed together, and this brother and sister pair had taken good care of him. Like a stalactite breaking out of the sea, the mountain rose up into the dark skies. Its incomparably smooth surface began to slowly surge with light. A faint milky white light exuded a sense of tranquility and comfort, completely at odds with the surrounding environment. But as this light appeared, the howling winds calmed down and the roaring waves gradually subsided. The restlessness in everyone's hearts also began to subside. Everyone's eyes gathered on the surface of the mountain. As they looked at the milky white light that appeared, their eyes blazed with heat. None of them lacked the ability to make basic judgments. The heartbeats in their chests suddenly sped up. Thump, thump, thump. They felt their mouths go dry. Treasure, a true treasure. This mystic realm in front of them must contain good fortune that far surpassed their imaginations. Rumble, rumble. The roar of the sea spread out from behind them. As if to confirm the speculations of the cultivators, the terrifying life forms that lived in the endless sea had appeared. Their goal was clearly to prevent everyone from entering the mystic realm. Roar, roar. Suppressed roars penetrated through the violently shaking seawater, drilling into everyone's ears and releasing a cruel killing intent. This did not scare the crowd. Instead, the eyes of the cultivators lit up even more. If they were to conclude that there was a great lucky chance in this mystic realm just because of the light that appeared on the mountain, then they were even more certain now. Mystic realms in the land of chaos were guarded by powerful life forms. But before they even entered, they were attacked by sea beasts. Was there any need to doubt the high quality and value of this mystic realm? It seemed that the appearance of the milky white light was a sign that this mystic realm was about to open. Kill. We will enter this mystic realm no matter what. A mere sea beast dares to be so insolent. You are courting death. Without needing to be organized or urged, the cultivators gathered outside the mystic realm attacked without hesitation. Of course, even though they attacked, they still held back. It was impossible for them to erupt with their strongest strength. At the same time, they swept their eyes around to judge the strength of their competitors. Although they were all well aware that they were holding back, they could still roughly judge each other's depths. There were many sea beasts, far more than the cultivators gathered outside the mountain's mystic realm. But, as mentioned before, those that had the qualifications to eat the bait and dared to take the risk to come here naturally weren't weak. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that they were incomparably strong. Thus, this astonishing number of sea beasts could only crazily rush over and offer up their heads. Blood gushed out, dyeing the sea red. Traces of scarlet seemed to be attracted to it, gathering around the mountain and being absorbed by it. The milky white light on the surface of the mountain shined even brighter. It absorbed blood and yet released a warm and gentle light that calmed one's mind. It was naturally incomparably strange. Many cultivators noticed this, but they didn't care. To be able to cultivate to this point, which one of them hadn't rushed through a storm of blood. They had long since grown accustomed to such strange and terrifying things. The blood of sea beasts can speed up the mystic realm's opening. Ha ha ha. Then let's kill to our heart's content. Kill them all. With endless blood, we will open the mystic realm. The speed of killing suddenly increased. It was true that he wanted to open the mystic realm ahead of time, but it was also to avoid attracting the truly terrifying creatures. After all, the land of chaos was a place where many original God realm experts had perished. No one dared to underestimate the dangers of this place. In the darkness, Chinyu didn't attack many times, but each strike was a sure kill. The cold aura of darkness froze the seawater into ice, forming a giant sphere of ice. Many eyes swept over the sphere of ice, and their pupils shrank, revealing fear. Thinking about it, Qin Yu had already been recorded in the list of cultivators that couldn't be easily provoked. And this was precisely the effect Qin Yu wanted. He didn't want to be targeted by others and attract unnecessary trouble. His gaze passed through the sphere of ice and fell on Yun Che, Master Yin, and the others. Because they had joined hands to kill the sea beasts, they had gradually joined up with another team. In particular, after both sides had helped each other several times, they smiled at each other and seemed to be on good terms. The woman who had chased after Qin Yu was in this team. In other words, the two women who had chased after Qin Yu not long ago had now gathered together. Suddenly, the shock waves erupted, giving rise to raging waves that roared and swept in all directions. The unending stream of sea beasts that didn't fear death seemed to feel some terrifying aura. They screamed and fled, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. And the source of these shock waves was the mountain in front of them. The light was so rich that it illuminated the entire sky. The mystic realm was about to open. Just as this thought appeared in everyone's mind, there was a light, cracking sound. A giant crack appeared on the smooth surface of the mountain. Thick rays of light gushed out, and an invisible strength was instantly released. This strength was extremely tyrannical. As it howled, it was like a giant hand slapping down. The cultivators that were close to the mountain paled. If they were hit head-on, the consequences wouldn't be much better than being smashed by the mountain. Fortunately, they didn't end up in a sorry state as they were sent flying. The moment the impact of the roaring power touched them, the various keys on their bodies released light at the same time, covering the cultivators with them. The shock wave instantly passed through them and continued to extend outwards, disappearing from sight in the blink of an eye. Of course, not everyone could be so lucky. Of the cultivators that had gathered outside the mountain, there was still a small portion that had been attracted here. They hadn't obtained a key or been recognized. Thus, with a few short and dull bangs, these people screamed miserably as they were sent flying in an instant. Crack, crack! This was the sound of these cultivators' bones and tendons breaking. Hearing this, many cultivators were secretly frightened. They thought that, in this situation, they would at least be severely wounded. Before everyone could regain their composure, a pulling strength was released from the mountain. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He took a step forwards and deviated from his original position, falling in the same direction as Yun Che, Master Yin, and the others. In the next moment, the pulling strength rose up. Those that obtained their keys were involuntarily sent flying towards the mountain. When their bodies came into contact with it, it was like they had struck the surface of water. In the rippling waves, they melted into nothing. Everything turned dark. After 3 breaths of time, light bloomed once more. Although Qin Yu had expected that this mystic realm would be extraordinary, when he truly opened his eyes, he still couldn't help but sigh. How could this be considered a mystic realm? It could almost be considered a small world. Because of the invisible strength that existed in this mystic realm, Qin Yu's range of perception was suppressed. Even so, the range he could sense was already astonishing enough. Qin Yu sighed for only a moment. He took a deep breath, his feet moving, and he held forwards. After everyone was pulled into the mystic realm, they appeared in different directions. Luckily, Qin Yu had adjusted his direction before entering. As for Yun Che and Master Yin, he had been in contact with them for a period of time. Thus, he was just barely able to lock onto their auras. They weren't too far away. But soon, Qin Yu discovered that it wouldn't be easy to catch up to them even though they weren't too far away. The reason was simple. The life forms in this mystic realm, whether they were strange beasts or plants, were all extremely aggressive and difficult to deal with. Chapter 1175. For example, at this moment, the vine in front of Qin Yu was crazily lashing at ground. Its main body was hidden deep underground, and it was unknown how big it was. Just the part that came out of the ground to attack Qin Yu was enough to blot out the sky. The dark purple vine was incomparably tough. After he cut it off, The mucus it sprayed out immediately emitted billowing, white smoke when it came into contact with the air. This white smoke was extremely poisonous and had a terrifying corrosive property. Qin Yu had to expend a great deal of strength in order to get rid of this vine. As for killing it, it wasn't that he couldn't do it, but this thing clearly had an exuberant life force, and its main body was buried deep underground. It was unknown how much time it would take to kill it. He could sense that Yun Che, Yun Shi, and the others' auras were even further away than before. They were clearly moving quickly. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu's expression became increasingly solemn. Even with his strength, he couldn't catch up to them in this secret realm. Either Yun Che, Yun Shi, and the others were lucky, or they had taken the arranged path and avoided most of the dangers. Even an idiot would know which was more likely. Qin Yu took a deep breath, faintly regretting his carelessness. He already knew that there was something wrong with those two women. If he let Yun Che and Yun Shi get hurt, he wouldn't be able to rest easy. But it was too late for regret. All Qin Yu could do was catch up to them as fast as he could. He hoped that those two women wouldn't make a move too early. Shwa! Qin Yu's speed increased, leaving behind an afterimage in the air as he chased after the two's auras. Their journey was smooth. This was the truest feeling of all the members of the two teams that had gathered together after entering the secret realm. Although they had encountered some attacks, the intensity was very low. Everyone worked together to easily resolve them. His natural cautiousness caused Yun Che to frown inwardly. He had always felt that this secret realm was acting too strangely. He had heard more than once about the dangers of high-ranked secret realms before entering the Endless Sea. Compared to this, the difference was too great. Were they really lucky? Taking a deep breath, Yun Che raised his head to look at the front of the team. Coincidentally, Yao Ling turned her head, and their eyes met in midair. Yao Ling was her name. No matter what others thought, in Yun Che's eyes, it was very beautiful. So beautiful that it made his heart beat faster. This was the first time in his life. Yun Che tried to control his mind, but he still couldn't help but be attracted to her. Perhaps what that last Yun Shi said was right. This was the so-called fate. As if she had sensed Yun Che's uneasiness and hesitation, Ringing Bell blinked her eyes, revealing a bit of doubt. Yun Che coughed and shook his head with a smile. He inwardly thought that he must have been overthinking things. Yao Ling had also said before that she had a keen sense for dangerous auras. Now, with her leading the way, it was possible for them to avoid most of the dangers. As for why Yao Ling had met with danger when he had saved her, cough, cough, Yun Che could no longer think of that much. Love could muddle a person's mind, and this point was once again proven by Yun Che. Half a day later, Yao Ling stopped and looked at the valley at the end of her line of sight. Her face lit up with joy. She turned around and said, "This is the place that the aura is pointing to. My perception tells me that there must be treasures inside." Yun Shi walked up to the front and stared at the mist above the valley hesitantly. "Really? Why do I feel that this valley is a little scary?" Yun Che glanced at his little sister and pondered for a moment. Then he said, "It's never wrong to be more cautious. Let's first investigate the situation in the valley before we make our decision." Yao Ling felt wronged, but still nodded. "Brother Yun is right. There's no harm in being careful." She lowered her head. Yun Che felt sorry for her, but couldn't say anything. He could only pretend that he didn't see it and turned around. "Zhou Qing, your movement is the fastest, and you can escape if there's a problem. How about you go and investigate?" Zhou Qing nodded obediently. In another group, a few people whispered to each other. A woman walked out. "I will go with fellow Taoist Zhou Qing. Let's go." Having made a decision, the two did not delay any longer. Their figures turned into shadows and ran towards the valley ahead. They quickly disappeared into the mist. A moment later, Zhou Qing and the woman returned. Although they looked a little disheveled, their faces were filled with unconcealable joy. "Brother Yin, After we entered the valley, we found a dazzling golden plant with golden fruits on it. Although we couldn't get close, the fragrance of the fruits made me feel 100 times more spirited just by smelling it. The woman said calmly, "The golden fruit tree has a guardian demon that is very strong, but if we work together, we should be able to deal with it." Yun-che looked at Zhou Cheng. Zhou Cheng nodded seriously. Fellow Taoist Zhang Ying is right. If we work together, there shouldn't be a problem. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. From the results of the investigation, Yao Ling's judgment was correct. Yun-che said apologetically, "Fellow Taoist Yao Ling, it's not that I don't trust you, but the land of Chaos Secret Realm is dangerous and strange." Yao Ling shook her head. "Brother Yin, there's no need to say anything. I understand." She glanced at him and smiled again. "Now we should hurry. After all, we aren't the only ones who entered the secret realm. We might be discovered by others." No one had any objections. After a bit of preparation, they headed straight for the valley. Yun-she frowned slightly. Her gaze fell on Yao Ling. It wasn't that she was suspicious, but she did have a bad feeling. Her shoulder was patted. She turned to look at her brother. After a moment of hesitation, she said softly, "I still feel that it's dangerous." Yun-che said, "It might be because of the secret realm itself that your perception has become more sensitive. Don't worry too much." After thinking for a while, he continued, "Later, just stay by my side. Just be a little more careful." Yun-she nodded. A moment later, the valley appeared in front of them. After everyone entered, they quickly saw the golden fruit tree that Zhou Cheng and Zhang Ying had mentioned. It was very tall, and its crown covered a large area. Its branches and leaves seemed to be made of pure gold, dazzling to the eyes. Round and plump fruits hung between the branches and leaves. They were also golden, but shone brighter like little golden suns. It smelled good. When he took a deep breath, he could clearly feel his heartbeat suddenly quicken, and his spirit abruptly became excited. Everyone's eyes lit up as they stepped into the valley. Zhou Huan licked the corner of his mouth. "What are you waiting for?" At this moment, a loud noise came from outside the valley. Although it was some distance away, it was loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. The expressions of the two teams who were about to make a move changed. Not good. Someone else had come. Immediately, several dissatisfied gazes fell on Yun-che. If he wasn't meddlesome, they would have sent people to investigate. Now the matter was almost over. Now, before they could do anything, someone else had arrived. Yun-che's complexion wasn't too good. He could feel the gazes that fell on him, and he felt helpless and depressed. Zhou Cheng said, "Brother Yun can't be blamed for this." Yun-che raised a hand to interrupt him. "I was too cautious and missed a good opportunity. But in the current situation, we can only wait. If the other party was just passing by, that would be for the best. But if they were coming for this valley like them, then they would have to think about it." The leader of the other team nodded calmly. He didn't say anything. Yun-che's proposal was indeed the best choice. Shoo! The sound of breaking air came. This time it was very close. The faces of everyone in the valley darkened. The other party had already arrived outside the valley. The possibility of them just passing by was minuscule. But what puzzled them was that, from the sound, there seemed to be only one person. Was he scouting ahead, or was there a companion hidden in the shadows? Before they could think further, a calm voice came from outside the valley. "Yun-che, Yun-she, if you are in the valley, please show yourself." "Ah." Yun-she's eyes widened, and he subconsciously rushed out. Yun-che didn't manage to hold him back and immediately followed. And then his little sister was bouncing up and down, a brilliant smile on her face. She pulled on Qin and asked, "How did you know I was here?" Qin let out a sigh of relief. He smiled and said, "I just happened to be nearby. I sensed your aura, so I came to take a look." Yun-che's eyes were deep. He looked at Qin several times. In this mystic realm, There was an invisible suppression that limited the range of one's divine sense. But Qin Yu said that he had sensed their auras, either his soul was far stronger than everyone else's or he was lying. Even though Qin Yu hadn't fought much since they met, Yun Che still had some understanding of the level of his cultivation. Yun Che didn't believe that Qin Yu's soul cultivation was so formidable. In other words, there was a high chance that Qin Yu was lying. Thinking of this, Yun Che stiffened. He immediately smiled and said, "Brother Qin, you and I are truly fated to meet here." As he spoke, he glared at Master Yin. "How old are you already? Why are you still acting so crazy? Hurry up and let go of fellow Taoist Qin." Master Yin didn't notice the change in her brother's attitude. She grabbed onto Qin Yu even harder. She humphed and said, "This fellow ate a great deal of good food from me along the way, but he left just like that. This time, I can't let him run away so easily." Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He thought that this little girl, if it weren't for the protection of a meticulous elder brother, she would have already been sold off by others. He glanced at Yun Che and calmly withdrew his hand. "Fellow Taoist Yun Che is right. You and I are indeed fated to meet." Then, Qin Yu faintly smiled. His eyes fell on the people that followed him out of the mountain valley. "But today, it isn't just you who are fated to meet me." The complexions of the two women changed, because it was obvious that Qin Yu was looking at them when he said these words. Yun Che frowned. "What does fellow Taoist Qin mean?" Qin Yu lightly said, "Not too long ago, I inadvertently encountered these two women fighting over a treasure. I don't know if it's because they've lost their memories or because of some other reason, but they don't recognize each other anymore." He paused. "Fellow Taoist Yun Che, what do you think is going on?" As he spoke, Qin Yu's finger moved between Yao Ling and Zhang Ying. The complexions of the people outside the mountain valley changed. If this was true, then there were far too many things that could be explained. Zhang Ying's pupils shrank. She saw Qin Yu's expression change. Just this change in expression was enough to prove that Qin Yu wasn't lying. It was actually true. Yun Che's face darkened. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He didn't think that this woman would reveal a flaw so easily. But from what he saw before, their acting skills were superb. This was a bit strange. Reality proved that Qin Yu's thoughts weren't wrong. Zhang Ying revealed an apologetic expression. "That's right. Yao Ling and I are old acquaintances. We even had some grudges before, and not too long ago we fought over a treasure." Speaking to hear, she revealed a bitter expression. "But in the end, that thing was taken away by fellow Taoist Qin, wasn't it?" Yao Ling's face paled. She nervously looked at Yun Che. "Big Brother Yin, I didn't mean it. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid that I would make you unhappy. After all, I'm not strong and I only joined halfway. I was afraid that you would think of me as a burden." Zhang Ying said, "My worries were similar to Yao Ling's." Afterwards, the two of us discussed in private. We didn't want to expose the fact that we knew each other so that no one would have any unnecessary suspicions. Pausing, she looked at Yao Ling apologetically. "I told this matter to fellow Taoist Lian Feng. He can testify." As the leader of the group, Lian Feng looked at everyone and nodded. He said in a low voice, "That's right, fellow Taoist Zhang Ying explained this to me. In order to prevent everyone from suspecting each other, I agreed with her actions." Yao Ling's face paled. "Big Brother Yin, I'm really sorry. I wanted to explain it to you after everyone separated." Qin Yu's eyes swept over Yun Che's changing expression. He frowned. Things had developed beyond his expectations, and he seemed to have fallen into a trap. This was going to be troublesome. Chapter 1176. As expected, Zhang Ying made her move. This woman's words were sharp. "We have already explained what fellow Taoist Qin Yu said. Although there were some parts that were wrong, we had no other intentions." After a brief pause, her tone became a bit heavier. "But fellow Taoist Qin Yu, perhaps you should explain why you are here." Qin Yu lightly said, "As I said before, I sensed Yun Che and Yun Shi's aura, so I rushed over to warn you. But looking at the current situation, it seems that I was overthinking things." Zhang Ying said, "Sensed aura? It seems that fellow Taoist Qin Yu's strength far surpasses our imagination. After all, in this mystic realm, our range of perception is extremely limited." She took a deep breath. "But there is one thing I want to know. That day we hurriedly parted ways, did fellow Taoist Qin Yu remember my aura and Yao Ling's? Or did you already discover us? So why did you jump out to warn us?" Qin Yu was silent. After determining that he had been tricked, he knew he couldn't explain himself. But there was nothing to explain. Ignoring Zhang Ying's question, he looked at the mountain valley in front of him and said, "This place isn't good. It is best if you don't enter. Of course, this is only a warning. Whether you want to listen or not is up to you." Yun Che said, "Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, do you not want to explain?" Qin Yu looked at him and shook his head. "Your emotions have already affected your thoughts and judgment. Explaining is useless. That is all I have to say. Everyone take care." He looked at Yun Shi. "Be careful. I'm leaving." Before Yun Shi could speak, Zhou Huan sneered. "You come and go as you please. Qin Yu, do you really think we can't do anything to you?" He stepped forward, his aura surging. But at this time, Qin Yu suddenly looked at him. This glance was like a bucket of cold water pouring over his head, causing his entire body to go cold and his heartbeat to nearly stop. The complexions of the surrounding people changed. Without pausing, Qin Yu took several steps forward and vanished from sight. A long time after he left, Zhou Huan let out a deep breath. He gasped for breath, his face pale and angry. He wanted to say something to redeem his face. His lips moved several times, but no sound came out. He didn't know why, but Qin Yu's eyes kept appearing in his mind. Then he couldn't help but feel fear and awe in his heart. Qin Yu left, but the atmosphere between the two teams changed a little. The valley was right in front of them, and they had already seen the golden fruit tree with their own eyes. Since they were unwilling to give up, they could only enter again. Everyone could clearly feel each other's cautious attitude. Intentionally or unintentionally, he widened the distance between him and Ringing Bell and Zhang Ying. "Big brother Yin." Yao Ling said bitterly. Yun Che revealed a smile. "It's fine. Even if there's a misunderstanding, it's fine as long as it's cleared up." He nudged Master Yin. "Ah, that's right. My brother is right. Everyone won't really mind. Don't worry, big sister Ringing Bell." She leaned over and held her hand, comforting her in a low voice. Looking at Yao Ling's pitiful and reddened eyes, Yunshi couldn't help but feel a little pity for her. But in her mind, she kept thinking about Qin Yu's attitude towards her and Zhang Ying. Although Qin Yu hadn't given any explanation, he had warned Yao Ling and Zhang Ying to be careful even before he left. It was clear that he was still suspicious of them. For some reason, as Yun Shi held Yao Ling's hand, she suddenly felt a chill from the bottom of her heart. The golden fruit tree had a guardian demon. It was similar to what Zhou Cheng and Zhang Ying had said. It wasn't too difficult for them to deal with it together. Even though they split some of their strength to deal with the trouble that might arise from Qin Yu's arrival, they still managed to clean it up after a while. The valley quieted down. Lian Feng opened his eyes and pointed a finger at the air. A phantom formation appeared and melted into the air. "All right, the formation is complete. Even if someone wants to break into the valley, it should be able to hold them off for a while." Everyone's expressions relaxed. Their eyes focused on the golden fruit tree. It seemed harmless, but they didn't dare to be careless. After all, it wasn't just guardian demons that could kill people in the secret realm. There were some plants that were even more terrifying. Yun Che said in a low voice, "Everyone be careful." The two teams had a total of 10 people, and each team was composed of 5 cultivators. This was also the reason why the two sides were able to work together. Their strength was similar, so it would reduce a lot of suspicion and trouble. As the leaders of the teams, Yun Che and Lien Feng were naturally the strongest, at least. That was how it seemed on the surface. The two stood at the front. Behind them were Zhou Huan and Zhou Cheng. Yao Ling and Zhang Ying were also among them. Yun Shi was relatively at the back. Because of Yun Che and Zhou Huan's and Zhou Cheng's attitude, Yun Shi was placed at the back of the group. Of course, Yun Shi was the weakest. If he was placed at another position, it could affect the safety of the entire team. The 10 people worked together and carefully approached the golden fruit tree. Lien Feng held a treasure in his hand that looked like an ocarina. According to him, it could detect auras and give warnings. The journey was smooth. The ocarina never made a sound. Now that the 10 people were close to the golden fruit tree, the sweet smell of the fruit was even stronger. Unconsciously, everyone's breathing deepened and their eyes shone with urgency. The treasure was right in front of them, and it didn't seem dangerous, so it was normal for them to have such an emotional reaction. Even the cautious Yun Che didn't notice anything wrong. After carefully sensing for a long time, he nodded towards Lien Feng. Although Qin Yu said that his thoughts and judgment were affected by his emotions, the truth was that Yun Che was still very careful. He didn't completely believe in Lien Feng or the ocarina flute-shaped treasure in his hand. Only after he determined that there was nothing wrong did he relax a little. Walala! A gust of wind blew past, ruffling the leaves of the golden fruit tree. As the leaves rubbed against each other, they emitted a metallic sound. But right now, no one had the mind to pay attention to this. This was because, as the wind blew past, the fruity smell became even richer. An intense desire surged out from the depths of their hearts. Although they didn't know what effects this golden fruit had, no one doubted its preciousness. But no one doubted its preciousness at all, because just by smelling it, the strength in their bodies had increased by a tiny bit. A cultivator in Lien Feng's team gulped. Everyone, what are we waiting for? The treasure is right in front of us. If we delay, something unexpected will happen. Yun Che took a deep breath. Before we determine its effects, it is best not to rashly eat the fruit. Let's work together to pick the fruit and divide it up. How about it? Lien Feng nodded. Brother Yun is wise. I have no objections. Everyone nodded. After reaching an agreement, they no longer hesitated. They scattered and flew towards the fruit tree. The fragrance became even stronger. Gulp! Master Yin swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he looked at the golden fruit in his hand. He wondered what it tasted like. She really wanted to taste it. As soon as this thought appeared, Yun Shi suppressed it. But soon, she discovered that the more she tried to suppress it, the stronger the impulse in her heart became. She took a deep breath and bit her lips. Her thoughts became even more intense. Eat it, it is already yours. If it smelled so good, it would definitely taste wonderful, and it would also be helpful to one's cultivation. If she secretly ate one, no one would notice. Moreover, her brother was one of the leaders of the team, and Zhou Huan and Zhou Qing both liked her, so it wouldn't matter even if others saw her. The fruit was slowly brought to her mouth. The closer it was, the more enticing it became. Yun Shi licked her lips, her saliva glistening. Yun Shi, what are you doing? The fruit was suddenly snatched away. Yun Shi looked up. Brother, Yun Che's complexion was ugly. Didn't I say that before we determine its effects, we cannot eat it? He turned his hand and put away the fruit. He glanced at Yun Shi. Step back. The fruit fragrance is too strong. You might not be able to bear it. Yun Shi wanted to refute, but Yao Ling walked over. Listen to Big Brother Yin. I will accompany you. After saying that, he pulled her along and walked out. Lien Feng suddenly said, This fruit fragrance is a bit strange. I suggest we not continue picking it. Let's determine its effects first. Not picking it? Why not? This is a treasure we found with great difficulty. Are we going to leave it to others? Zhou Huan stared at the remaining half of the golden fruit and roared. Yun Che frowned. But at this moment his complexion changed. No, there is one person missing. Everyone was shocked and quickly scanned their surroundings. As expected, there were only 9 people left in front of them. The one missing was the other woman in Lian Feng's group besides Zhang Ying. She was here just now. I remember it clearly. The cultivator that approached this woman had an ugly complexion. He anxiously looked around. Lian Feng shushed them. Don't speak. Listen. Everyone quieted down. Then they heard a light crunching sound. The moment they heard this sound, the image of someone biting into a juicy fruit and chewing it in their mouths appeared in everyone's minds. Crunch! There was another sound. This time, everyone locked onto the source of the sound. They looked up at the same time. It was there. Zhou Huan clenched his teeth. She is stealing it. Lian Feng's complexion was ugly. After all, everyone had agreed that they would all pick the fruit before dividing it. But the person beside him had broken the rules. Everyone rest assured. No matter how many fruits you eat, I guarantee that I will take double the amount. I will not miss out on your share. As he spoke, he stepped forward and howled through the leaves. I will go and grab her. This method of handling things was quite satisfactory. After eating 1 fruit, 2 were taken away as punishment. After dividing it up, everyone had obtained a bargain. But at this time there was a miserable scream. Lian Feng, who had rushed into the thick leaves above them, tumbled down. He fell to the ground and wildly rolled about, screaming again and again. Traces of black energy constantly emitted from his body, corroding his flesh and blood. The scene was extremely bloody. The sudden turn of events caused everyone's expressions to change greatly. Before they could react, a black shadow pounced down. Fruit, give me your fruit. A sharp and grating voice rang out. Looking at her clothes, the black shadow was the woman who had stolen and eaten the fruit. But now, she was completely unrecognizable. Red hair pierced through her skin and grew densely, enveloping her entire body. Her face was distorted, and her facial features were hideous. She looked like a devil from hell. And what was most terrifying was that as she roared, her mouth was still chewing. Blood splashed out. It was actually a piece of fresh meat. Looking at Lian Feng, who was rolling about on the ground in increasing pain, the source was obvious. Yun Che roared out, "Be careful!" He punched out. Bang! The red-haired woman was forced back, but she only paused for a moment before rushing out again, without any signs of injury. Let's retreat first. 2 cultivators rushed out to grab Lian Feng. Everyone rapidly retreated, but the red-haired woman madly chased after them. Even though she was forced back again and again, she was still alive and kicking. Fruit, it's because of the fruit. Yun Che waved his hand and threw away all the golden fruits he had picked. The red-haired woman didn't chase after them. She rushed up to pick up the fruits and ate them clean. As she continued to eat the fruits, the woman let out a painful yet joyful roar. Amidst the crackling sounds of her bones and flesh, her body swelled up again and again. Her skin couldn't bear it anymore and cracked, revealing her scarlet flesh and blood gushed out. But at this time, even more red hair drilled out from her flesh and blood, sucking up all the blood. As expected, this woman's change was because of these golden fruits. Seeing this with her own eyes, Master Yun paled. If it weren't for Yun Che stopping her just now, she feared she would have become like this. She opened her mouth to say something, but discovered that she couldn't move. She couldn't even speak a single word. Her eyes widened in panic. She turned to look at the bell beside her and gave it a charming smile. But there was no emotion in her eyes, as cold as an empty shell. Throw away the fruits, throw them all away. She could clearly hear Yun Che's roars in her ears. Master Yun desperately struggled, but to no avail. Chapter 1177. A thought flashed through her mind. Qin Yu was right. There was indeed a problem with Yao Ling. Since there was a problem with her, then Zhang Ying was definitely in cahoots with her. Yun Shi's eyes widened because she saw Zhang Ying appear behind Yun Che. She wanted to harm her big brother. His heartbeat quickened, and he seemed to hear a light "kacha" sound in his ears, as if something in his body had shattered. "Big brother, be careful." Yun Shi screamed with all her strength. Then she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her exposed skin turned red. It was like a raging flame had been ignited in her body. The blood that fell to the ground actually began to burn as it came into contact with the air. The temperature in the air rapidly rose. Yun Che's complexion changed. He moved to avoid the sneak attack from behind. Seeing that her attack had failed, Zhang Ying retreated. She frowned and grabbed Yun Shi's bell. Fire-bathing lineage. Yao Ling was a bit surprised and then happy. Yun Che's eyes flashed with disbelief. He clenched his teeth and said, "There really is a problem with you." As he spoke, he stared at Yao Ling. Yun Shi was in her hands. Hearing this, Yao Ling chuckled. "Big brother Yin, the truth is that I quite like you, but I have no other choice." Their original plan wasn't like this, but Qin Yu's appearance had forced them to act ahead of time. Luckily, things had gone smoothly so far. Moreover, Yun Shi was actually from the fire-bathing lineage. This was an unexpected surprise. Yun Che didn't have time to regret. He coldly said, "Let go of Yun Shi, and I will give you two a chance to live." Besides the injured Lian Feng and the red-furred woman, there were still 5 of them. Even if Yao Ling and Zhang Ying hid their strength, they still weren't their match. Thinking of this, Yun Che's heart ached and he felt endless gratitude towards Qin Yu. If it weren't for him suddenly appearing and messing up the 2 women's plans, they really would have been in danger. 5 against 2. You did have the absolute advantage. Yao Ling's lips curled up. But now, I'm afraid that is no longer the case. Yun Che was startled. Before he could respond, 2 miserable screams sounded out. The 2 people supporting Lian Feng had their chests torn apart and their organs fell to the ground. Their eyes widened and blood gushed out from their noses and mouths. Lian Feng, who was badly mutilated and had a sinister appearance, did not seem to feel any pain from his injuries. His voice was indifferent. "Don't waste time. Finish them off quickly." As he spoke, a piece of rotten flesh on his face fell to the ground. The cultivator whose chest had been torn open hadn't died yet. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Senior apprentice brother Lian Feng, Lian Feng said he died a long time ago, but it doesn't matter. You two will be together very soon." The red-haired woman, who had eaten the golden fruit, was attracted by the smell of blood and pounced on the 2 corpses, tearing them apart. The scene was bloody and horrifying. Upon seeing this scene, Yun Che, Zhou Huan, and Zhou Qing, who were still alive, felt as if they had fallen into an icy cavern as a chill spread from the bottom of their hearts. It was obvious that coming to the valley was a conspiracy from the very beginning. Lian Feng said, "Have you thought it through? That's fine. Then I'll send you all on your way." He let out a sharp howl. The red-haired woman, who was tearing apart the 2 corpses, suddenly raised her head and stared at Yun Che and the others. Bang! The ground was torn apart by the sharp claws of her hands and feet. The red-haired woman howled as she hurtled towards Yun Che and the others. After eating a massive number of golden fruits and a great deal of flesh and blood, the red-haired woman's body had become even larger. She was just like a red-haired monster, but contrary to her massive body, her speed wasn't affected at all. Instead, she was even faster and more agile than before. Her sharp claws clawed at Yun Che, tearing apart the air and emitting piercing sounds. 3 against 1, they could only barely maintain a balance. None of their attacks could cause any serious damage to the red-haired monster. Yun Che's complexion became increasingly ugly. At some unknown time, there was also the monster that had replaced Lian Feng, Yao Ling, and Zhang Ying, glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Today was likely going to be dangerous. Glancing at his little sister, who was caught by Yao Ling, Yun Che clenched his teeth. He suddenly lifted his hand and threw out a token. Bang! As this token touched the air, it began to burn, turning into an incomparably massive flame rune that shot into the sky. The air fiercely twisted, and the phantom of a great array appeared, trapping the flame rune within. Lian Feng grinned. The fire-bathing lineage's SOS token, fortunately, I laid down an array before. Otherwise it really would have been troublesome. He glanced at Zhang Ying. Let's attack together to avoid any complications. As he finished speaking, he took a step forward. As his body shook, the rotten flesh and blood that adhered to his body suddenly broke off and flew out, covering Yun Che. Bang, bang. Pieces of rotten flesh and blood exploded, turning into a thick black and scarlet mist. Yun Che hurriedly retreated. But no one expected that although Lian Feng had attacked him, his target wasn't him. Taking advantage of Yun Che's retreat, the skeletal Lian Feng raised his hand and punched at Zhou Huan. Roiling gray energy condensed, forming a bone dragon that roared and tore at Zhou Huan. Caught off guard, Zhou Huan's face paled. He screamed and threw out a treasure, exploding it with a loud explosion as he retreated. But at this time his body froze. Zhang Ying's eyes had turned blood red. Her gaze was locked onto his body with an incomparably strange expression. Being locked onto by this pair of blood-red eyes, Zhou Huan's mind went blank for a moment and he froze in place. Although this process was brief, by the time he regained his composure, the bone dragon phantom was already in front of him and swallowed him whole. Ah! His miserable screams came to an abrupt end. The skeletal Lian Feng vigorously chewed. Although there was clearly nothing in his mouth, it emitted a zzz sound and he swallowed a few times in a happy manner. Zhou Huan! Honest, Zhou Cheng's eyes instantly turned red. The two were brothers of the same clan and had grown up together. They had a close relationship. Lian Feng laughed as he ate. Don't worry, it's your turn next. As he spoke, his complexion suddenly changed. The array phantom that sealed the flame rune fiercely shook. In the next moment, it shattered. Whoosh! The flame rune soared into the sky. Lian Feng screamed miserably and vomited in great mouthfuls. Although he was clearly a skeleton, he actually spat out pieces of chewed flesh and blood. Mixed within were pieces of robe. This was Zhou Huan, who had just been swallowed by the bone dragon phantom. Be careful, someone has broken in. Yun Shi's complexion changed. Just as he was about to bring her away, he froze. With one hand, he grabbed her neck and twisted it forcefully. Kacha! The crisp sound of bones breaking was followed by the sound of flesh tearing apart. Her entire head was torn off and tossed to the ground. It spun several times, her eyes wide and her face filled with fear. Save me! Hurry and save me! Her head screamed on the ground. But she only had time to shout twice before the light in her eyes rapidly dimmed. Pa! With a light sound, Yun Shi's head exploded and her corpse fell to the ground, rotting away in the blink of an eye. It was as if this woman had died many years ago, and it was only because of some unknown force that she was able to maintain her appearance when she was alive. And just now, after her head was torn off, the strength that kept her alive was also destroyed. Yun Shi fell backwards into a firm embrace. Her eyes widened. Big brother Qin. As she spoke, she spat out blood. Her body was crimson, like a piece of red-hot iron. Qin Yu frowned. He lifted a hand and placed it between her eyebrows. Don't speak. Go to sleep first. A dark mark appeared between Yun Shi's eyebrows. The terrifying temperature that she released immediately began to rapidly decrease. Her exposed skin also returned to normal in a breath of time. But Qin Yu knew that he was only forcefully suppressing the backlash of Yun Shi's bloodline. This could be considered a temporary solution. Brother Qin. Yun Che's face lit up with joy. Then he revealed a look of shame. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. Strength gushed out from the void and pulled back Yun Che and the red-eyed Zhou Cheng. You two leave first. As he spoke, he handed Yun She over to them. Yun Che's eyes widened. Brother Qin, let's go. Qin Yu didn't explain further. Yun Che clenched his teeth. He held onto Yun She with one hand and grabbed onto Zhou Cheng with the other. Then he turned and rushed out of the valley. Skeleton Lian Feng's two eye sockets were completely empty. Now he stubbornly stared at Qin Yu and screamed, "Who are you?" Zhang Ying's eyes were blood red. She whispered, "I can't lock onto his aura." This was the first time such a situation had occurred. Although she had ended up in a state that was neither human nor ghost, she still retained the abilities of the sly Fate lineage. Qin Yu ignored them. His eyes fell onto the depths of the valley where the golden fruit tree quietly stood. He lightly said, "Now that things have come to this, it's time for the main character to show himself. I can't always have these two puppets jump around in front of me." The valley was silent. Qin Yu had no expression. "That's fine. I'll cripple these puppets first. Let's see just how long you can endure." He lifted a hand and pressed forward. His 5 fingers spread out like 5 great mountains, suppressing all directions. Lian Feng and Zhang Ying's complexions changed. At this time in their perception, the world had turned dark. It was like an endless abyss, like the eternal night that came after the sun, as if it wanted to pull them in so that they would never be able to transcend. Bang! The golden fruit tree suddenly erupted with endless light. Every inch of its branches and leaves began to burn, emitting a blinding golden light. This endless light was like a sharp arrow that howled towards Qin Yu. The air violently twisted, as if it couldn't withstand the strength of the golden arrows of light. Pitch black cracks began to appear in the air. Endless darkness erupted with Qin Yu as the center. It was like a pitch-black maw that led to some unknown place. All of the light that shot towards him was swallowed up. However, only Qin Yu, who was in the darkness, knew that what was truly terrifying about these seemingly terrifying golden lights was the soul force contained within them. Or it was more accurate to say that this was a kind of mutated soul force. It possessed a horrifying toxicity. Once it came into contact with the soul, it would corrode away like maggots that wouldn't stop until they died. The old turtle ate happily. His appetite was quite good. As long as it was soul force, he didn't care about the type. In fact, Qin Yu could even feel a trace of joy from his mood. This was probably because he had tasted a different kind of delicacy. However, according to the intensity of the soul force, the old turtle judged that the golden fruit tree in front of him was only an avatar. In other words, the true master wasn't here. Qin Yu immediately lost all thoughts of entangling himself with this old turtle. There were many people that rushed into the mystic realm, and there was no lack of powerful characters among them. He didn't want the chance he had chosen to become famous to be snatched away by someone else. Because of the repeated delays, he feared he didn't have enough time to cross the endless sea. Thus, Qin Yu couldn't lose this chance. "Tell me where your main body is, and perhaps I can let you live." In the darkness, Qin Yu's calm voice echoed out. The golden fruit tree surface erupted with an even more intense light. It dyed the entire mountain valley gold and tore apart all the clouds in the sky. The commotion became even greater. Soon, more people would be drawn over. Qin Yu shook his head. He stepped forwards. The darkness rushed deep into the mountain valley, towards the golden fruit tree that had taken root in the ground. It didn't resist, only passively withstanding it. But this was only what it saw on the surface, because the darkness was silent and swallowed up all of the golden light. Within the golden light, Lian Feng and Zhang Ying constantly shivered in fear. Suddenly there was a sharp scream. This scream was aimed at the soul and couldn't be heard by the ears. In their fear, Lian Feng and Zhang Ying suddenly roared out in pain. Then their bodies exploded and 2 phantoms rushed out, submerging into the ground where the golden fruit tree was. In the next moment, the ground shattered and countless golden roots tore through the earth. These roots were like chains that tightly wrapped around 3 corpses, 1 man and 2 women. However, one of the women's corpses instantly decayed as soon as they appeared, turning into powder. It was the dead Yaoling whose head had been pulled off by Qin Yu just now. The other woman was Zhang Ying, and the unfamiliar man should be Lian Feng. Shua. On their pale faces, the 2 people opened their eyes. Golden light surged within them as they stared at Qin Yu. "Who are you?" The man and woman spoke in unison. Their deep voices were strange and stiff, without the slightest fluctuation of emotion. In the darkness, Qin Yu remained expressionless. "Right now, my promise is still valid." "Die!" the man and woman roared out at the same time. They lifted their hands and formed complex hand seals. Golden light gathered around them, forming 2 terrifying marks. A boundless pressure was released, causing the darkness to shake and billowing waves to rise up. Bang, bang. The 2 marks howled out, crashing into the darkness. Qin Yu couldn't help but stop and sigh inwardly, as he thought there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in this world. With his strength, he didn't fear the famous land of chaos too much. But now, it seemed that he had been too careless, not to mention anything else. Just this avatar alone had such strength. The dangers of this mystic realm far surpassed Qin Yu's imagination. If it weren't for the old turtle's existence, then these 2 marks would have been more than enough for Qin Yu to suffer. Of course, the reality was that they crashed into the darkness. Before they could even touch Qin Yu, they were cleanly swallowed up. Hic, it seemed that they had eaten too much. Chapter 1178. As the top boss of the death-fearing world, the degree to which he feared death was incomprehensible to the average person. To the old turtle, what did eating a bit of food count for? As long as he could extend his life, he could eat at least a dozen more of those marks. But soon, as the old turtle licked his lips in anticipation, he was disappointed to discover that he seemed to have overestimated the energy of the split fruit tree in front of him. After striking out 2 marks, the golden fruit tree's dazzling golden light clearly dimmed. The male and female corpses that were entangled by the golden roots were too shaken. They asked the same question once more. "Who are you?" In the darkness, Qin Yu frowned. He thought that this person was stubborn enough, but this sort of stubborn fellow would find it difficult to change their mind once they decided on something. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them. Then he wouldn't waste any more time. After all, the commotion here was far too great. Whether it was other cultivators or the life forms within the mystic realm, it would be much more troublesome. Bang! Darkness held outwards, blotting out the skies like a great curtain. It submerged the golden fruit tree and the 2 corpses it controlled. The golden light that illuminated the world immediately vanished from sight. All that was left was tumbling darkness and a colding aura that filled the air. The golden fruit tree that was swallowed up by the darkness rapidly withered. Its branches and leaves scattered with the wind until all that was left over was a golden crystal that was shaped like a heart. The roaring red-furred monster seemed to lose all strength as the golden fruit tree withered. As it struggled and howled, it turned to powder along with the golden fruit tree. Qin Yu lifted his hand and grasped the crystal. As he felt the boundless soul strength within, a dignified expression crossed his face. Such a formidable soul strength was actually just a split body. Although he already knew this, he was still shaken after personally confirming it. Now, the only thing Qin Yu was curious about was how many split bodies similar to the heart-shaped crystal in his hand were in this mystic realm. If there were 3 or 5, then that would be fine. But if there were more than 10, then the big fellow hidden in this mystic realm would be difficult to deal with. As Qin Yu was secretly calculating, as the golden fruit tree withered and died, the 2 corpses it controlled began to gently shiver. The eyes of the man's corpse rapidly trembled as he desperately tried to open them. But right at this time, strange blood-red lines appeared on his face. Then his body rapidly rotted away. Wisps of greenish-white gas came out of the rotten corpse and were absorbed by the female corpse next to it. She opened her eyes. His eyes were crimson, exactly the same as the blood-colored lines on the rotten man's face. Confusion flashed in her blood-red eyes before she immediately regained focus. As she looked at Qin Yu, the blood-red light in her eyes suddenly rose. Qin Yu's heart shrank. A trace of dread and unease broke into his mind. He lifted his hand and grasped the air. Bang! The endless darkness collapsed inward, as if a ferocious mouth had suddenly appeared and swallowed the blood-eyed woman. Ah, don't kill me. I have the bloodline of the Sly Fate clan. If you take my life, you'll definitely be hunted down to the ends of the earth. Qin Yu was expressionless. His fingers clenched together. The woman's scream came to an abrupt end. He had heard of the Sly Fate clan twice, but he had already rushed through the abyssal world. So why would he fear them? Since he had schemed against him, then he should be prepared for death to knock on his door. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. He looked down at his palm. Blood-red lines appeared on the back of his hand, constantly extending upwards as if they were alive. At the same time, traces of an extremely colding aura were released, drilling deep into Qin Yu's body. Humph! This was the mark left behind by killing the Sly Fate clan? It really was strange. But to Qin Yu, it wasn't like there was no way around it. With a thought, the blood-red lines on the back of his hand stopped growing. Then they shrank back, forming a round on the back of his hand that looked like a blood mole. But this was all he could do. There was no way to completely expel this strength from his body. Qin Yu frowned for a moment before composing himself. He took a step forward, his figure howling. Outside the mountain valley, Yun Che was holding the unconscious Master Shi. Master Yun and Zhou Cheng were anxiously waiting. The reason they hadn't chosen to leave was because Qin Yu had saved them, and because Master Yun's condition was terrible. The golden light that shot into the heavens and the extremely terrifying fluctuations of strength that erupted from within the mountain valley left the two of them panic-stricken. At the same time, they also understood why Qin Yu wanted them to leave. If they stayed in the mountain valley, just the shockwaves alone would be enough to take their lives. Whoosh! With the sound of breaking air, Yun Che saw Qin Yu fly out. He let out a long breath of relief and hurried over. Qin Yu glanced at them. Let's leave this place first. With a flick of his sleeves, he swept the three of them away. Without any hesitation, he flew into the distance and soon disappeared from sight. An hour after Qin Yu's group of 4 left, a meteor smashed into the ground, creating a terrifying crater. Scorched black soil splashed outwards, and countless cracks spread out. From the raging flames, a young man walked out. He had an ordinary appearance and a bald head. His clothes were also very casual. If this were a different scene, perhaps it would be a little funny. But now, the only feeling one felt was horror. After walking out of the crater, the bald man entered the mountain valley. His pace wasn't fast, but every step he took left behind a scorched black footprint. His eyes swept over the messy mountain valley that had been ravaged by darkness. Suddenly, he raised his hand and grasped forward. Several sparks appeared out of thin air and fell into his palm. It was indeed the aura of the fire-bathing lineage, but it was very unfamiliar. In this endless sea trial, he was the only one from his clan to enter. Where did the other clansmen come from? Moreover, there was another point. The aura that remained here wasn't too pure. His eyes flashed, and the bald man let go, allowing the sparks in his palm to dissipate. He had already memorized this aura. As long as this person was still in the mystic realm, he would encounter him sooner or later. But this mountain valley, what a tyrannical aura! Even though most of it had already dissipated, just the remnant portion alone wasn't difficult to deduce what had happened here not too long ago. Indeed, it was just as the patriarch had said. This endless sea trial wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface. Many cultivators with formidable strengths had stepped into the valley with their own objectives. Today, Flaming Wind had noticed one such person in this gorge. He silently asked himself if he could defeat the cultivator in this mountain valley. The answer was that he didn't know. If he didn't know, then that meant he wasn't certain. In other words, if both sides fought with their lives on the line, it was highly likely that he would be the one to die. Burning Wind smiled. Yes, he really did smile, and it came from his heart. How dull and dull was the cultivation of the great Tao. Only when powerful opponents appeared one after another could one maintain their fighting spirit. Powerful opponents weren't terrifying. As long as one defeated them and stepped on them one by one, they could constantly grow stronger. The smiling Burning Wind was in a good mood. This caused him to change his mind about attacking. He turned and said, "You sly Fate Clan people are always sneaky and sneaky. Since you've already arrived here, you might as well come out." Humph! With a cold sneer, the air twisted and a cold and gloomy man appeared. His appearance was similar to the male and female corpses that Chinyu had seen before. Both of them had pale blue faces without the slightest hint of blood. The only difference was that this cold man's eyes were very bright, shining like two long sabers that were whistling and dancing in the air. If it weren't for the remnant aura here, completely disagreeing with you, I would have already attacked just now. The cold and gloomy man's voice was icy cold. For killing someone of my sly Fate Clan's bloodline, no matter where you go, you won't be able to escape the fate of paying with blood. Burning Wind's smile faded. The one who attacked us in the mountain valley isn't any weaker than you or me. If we really encountered him, it's hard to say who would die. Hooking Soul, you better think this through. The cold-looking man turned around and left. He will be the one to die. Space distorted, and his whole person was like a shadow. After a few steps, he disappeared. At the same time, the extremely cold aura that emanated from his body also disappeared. It was as if he had never been here in the first place. In fact, if one were to look closely, they would discover that the cold and sinister man was walking towards them. Not even footprints were left in this place. The sly Fate Clan was said to be able to control fate and alter life and death. They were one of the most mysterious clans in the world. The members of their clan were elusive, and they would disappear as soon as lightning appeared. It was difficult for ordinary people to find traces of them, and Bewitching Soul was one of the most outstanding members of the sly Fate tribe's younger generation. Rumor had it that he already possessed the strength of an Anidia Hellguard, making him the most terrifying existence in the sly Fate Clan apart from a few old bones. Burning Wind said softly, "You've been targeted by soul reaping. Don't die easily, otherwise it would be too boring." As he turned around, flames appeared out of thin air, wreaking havoc as they devoured his figure. The next moment, the burning flames suddenly disappeared, and Ranfang's figure also disappeared along with it. Qin, you glanced behind him. Just now, there were some ripples in his mind. There was a faint restlessness. It was like he had been locked onto by a predator hidden in the darkness. He was certain that what happened in the mountain valley had been discovered by someone. If he could sense something and feel uneasy, then this person must be incredibly strong. But who was it? Qin glanced at Yun Shi, who was being held in Yun Che's arms. The fire-bathing lineage should be there. Moreover, it might be the sly Fate Clan that the female corpse had mentioned before she died. Although Qin, you didn't know much about these two sides. He had heard Yun Che and the others mention them before he left the ship. It seemed that they were both extraordinary family inheritances. Yun Che had been waiting outside the valley for him to come out. So Qin, you could naturally guess what he was thinking. Then, even if he didn't say anything about the fire-bathing lineage, he would have mentioned it on his own initiative. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He stopped and pointed to the ground. "Let's rest here for now." He landed on the ground and found a hidden place. After sweeping out with his divine sense and confirming that there was no danger, he nodded. Who? Yun Che let out a long breath. He carefully placed Yun Shi down and bowed. Thank you, Brother Qin, for saving me. I was blind before, and I ask Brother Qin to forgive me for my disrespect. Qin Yu waved his hand. Since I helped you, I didn't care about this matter. Moreover, I had my own considerations. His words weren't tactful, but Yun Che truly relaxed. The more Qin Yu acted like this, the more it showed that he truly didn't care. Only after confirming that Qin Yu had forgiven him could Yun Che ask him to save him. Brother Qin, my little sister's life is in danger. I ask that you save her on account of her sincerity towards you. Qin Yu glanced at Yun Shi. The dark mark between her eyebrows had dimmed a great deal. He frowned. Her bloodline had gone berserk and was stronger than he had imagined. Fire-bathing lineage. With such a tyrannical bloodline, her strength could be imagined. Just as Qin Yu was about to speak, his complexion changed. He lifted a hand and pressed it against the ground. A wild strength instantly erupted outwards. Dong, the entire earth violently shook. Countless cracks exploded outwards. A pained scream rang out. A monster beast that looked like a rat that had been hiding in the dark had its head blown apart. Looking at its corpse, Qin Yu frowned, surprise in his eyes. He lifted his hand and a lotus flower appeared in his palm. It was beautiful and vibrant. Suddenly, the lotus flower moved without wind, releasing a swallowing strength. Motes of golden light flew out from the monster beast's corpse and were instantly absorbed by the lotus flower. After it was completed, the luster it emitted was several times brighter than before. He was right. Qin Yu put away the lotus flower. His eyes fell on Yun Shi once more. This time, they were a bit more dignified. This rat-like monster beast had an extremely strong ability to conceal its aura. If not for the old turtle warning him, he wouldn't have been able to sense it. Its target was none other than the unconscious Yun Shi. The facts proved that this monster beast was being controlled. Behind it was the powerful soul form that Qin Yu was secretly startled to find hiding in this mystic realm. But what was the reason?